Day 2 of the 3-day virtual tour of the Gila today as the Echelon Racing League rolls on in our virtual version of Silver City. Today, just over 30 miles awaiting the riders on a legendary course, including the Mogollon Climb. You're going up, and up some more today after a short time trial yesterday. We've got some leaders at the top of the virtual tour of the Gila, and today we're going to see maybe in a little more separation in the general classification as, again, they head out to that big Mogollon Climb. And we'll see if Scott Catanzaro and company on that next ESports team, along with Kevin Bouchard-Hall, yesterday's fastest time trialist, will be able to conquer the long roads outside of Silver City today. Brad Soner back with Ellen Noble for our second day of racing after an evening time trial last night. Ellen, not a whole lot of time for these riders to recover before getting back to it this morning. All right, before we get started, I want to welcome our in real life race director for a few opening words for our riders. This is Jack Brennan, the legend of Silver City.
Jack, again, race director for the in-life tour of the Gila. Today is a point-to-point race from Cliff, New Mexico, up to a cattle guard close to the mining town of Mogollon. Cliff is a farming community. It's been around for years and years, and it's right along the Gila Valley. So we're going to start kind of in the valley of the Gila River and then climb out. It's a small climb, kind of a long, gradual ascent out of the valley, and then it's undulating until we get to the community of Glenwood, New Mexico. And then it's all going to change. It's kind of still undulating, some climbing up to our turn, up to Mogollon. Then it's 7 miles of a brutal climb. The first 3 miles is up to what we call Whitewater Mesa. There's some 16% grades up to Whitewater Mesa. Then it's flat going across the mesa. And then you hit another cattle guard. And it's 3 miles from that cattle guard to the cattle guard finish at our finish at Mogollon. And that's when everything just cuts loose. The road is not improved. It is what it was probably back in 1920. There's sections of the road that's been unpaved for years and years. The turns are tight, switchbacks. But again, the climbing is just long and strenuous. And we'll see what happens when you get to the finish. Enjoy.
You want to talk about how remote the riding out in Silver City is? They use cattle guards as landmarks out there, talking about heading up to that Mogollon Climb and then making your way back. But it really is such a unique, beautiful, and special place out there in New Mexico. We also have a special guest to kick our riders off this morning on the second day. Let's hear from them.
I'm Howie Morales, the Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to the 2022 virtual Tour of the Gila cycling race. And I want to thank everyone for returning to this really special competition that is heart and soul to beautiful Southwest New Mexico. The Tour of the Gila is a great community-wide event that we are proud of here in the Southwest, my home. If you haven't visited us in person yet, I hope you will soon. If you've been here before, please come back and see us again. Make a plan to do it in the near future, and I promise you that you won't be disappointed. It is such a unique and beautiful area. Even though we are mostly out of the big scare of COVID, which was the impetus for this virtual race, I'm very happy that the great Tour of the Gila is going to occur again this year, both virtually and in person. For that, I am grateful to all the organizers and volunteers who make this race happen year after year. We really do appreciate you. I want to especially thank Jack and Brad for leading the efforts. And we are very excited to have a virtual platform that delivers an amazing real-life race course for this year's tour again. It's wonderful technology from the Echelon Racing League. They've done a great job again, and I think you will enjoy it. Don't miss all the live broadcasts of the virtual tour of the Gila. They will cover all the minute-to-minute happenings on the race course. I grew up and have spent almost my whole life in this community where the Tour of the Gila takes place, in rural, beautiful Silver City, New Mexico. I live here today still with my family And let me tell you, we are honored and excited to have all the national and international attention that the tour of the Gila brings. I have to make a pitch for coming to visit us. Southwest New Mexico is home to some of the most fascinating experiences, from the epicenter of the country's oldest wine-growing region to the nation's official wilderness area, to the world's first purpose-built commercial spaceport. Southwest New Mexico offers plenty to our spirit of adventure steeped in culture. And Silver City and the nearby region is home to 3 great national parks and monuments: the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument, the Prehistoric Trackways National Monument, and the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument. And on top of that, Silver City itself is also home to one of the oldest country's best and most charming Main Street America. Accredited districts getting the nationally recognized award that is bestowed to only 3 Main Street programs each year. So please, come back for the In Real Life tour of the Gila that will be held from April 26th through April 30th. Registration is already open. You can go to the tourofthegila.com website to register. So good luck, everyone. Have a great race. Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales. Not every day you get the Lieutenant Governor out there cheering the riders on, but Tour of the Gila brings out the heavy hitters for both the in real life and virtual race. Early lead here from Lucas Verslies. We have watched this Canadian rider take some very aggressive early starts here in the Echelon Racing League. He's back to it out there today. Whether or not he holds on for the remaining 47 kilometers remains to be seen, because there's a whole bunch of riders keeping an eye on him back behind, including yesterday's time trial winner, Kevin Bouchard-Hall. Back for more. There is Verslies in his pain cave. Actually built himself a pretty good early lead here, 140 meters up the road. It's one way to start the morning.
It is. That is one way to wake up the legs, just to really shock them into movement.
I'm worried about what happened to the drop ceiling panels behind him. He's got a big old hole in the ceiling. I don't know if he's doing some HVAC work before he got on air. Maybe installing a new cold air return for his training room, keeping it down to that chilly 56 degrees or whatever the ideal temperature is to ride in.
Yeah, if he is doing that, he might want to talk to yesterday's winner, Kevin Bouchard-Hall, about his success with having work done at his home just before a virtual race. Sort of goes to show the aches and pains of this virtual racing.
Bouchard-Hall right there getting cut out of his time trial yesterday afternoon. There were 2 sessions, a morning session and an evening session. He tried to do the morning session, but the gas company had different ideas when they cut the power to his house. Not sure if that was on accident or on purpose. Maybe Scott Catanzaro called the gas company on him, sent him over to do an inspection. Seems suspicious that it would be right in the middle of the ERL time trial.
Seems like it worked for him just fine.
Well, Catanzaro back out there. I think those are going to be 2 of the big names to watch today, with the next eSport rider, Catanzaro, turning in one of the better early time trial times in that first session. But Bouchard-Hall doing the evening session. Here's Catanzaro in his pain cave. Got the backdrop, the step and repeat. It's like some art from the kids up on the wall too. I dig this. I like this pain cave.
This is a dialed pain cave. He has, looks like a podcast mic as well, maybe for live streaming some of his rides. Now I'm speculating, but very, very dialed pain cave we're seeing here.
Maybe a state champions jersey up there on the wall, up above him. And then you see he's got the profile down below, the second screen. So a lot on the line in this stop of the Echelon Racing League. Obviously, this is the second of 3 days at the virtual Tour of the Gila. Now, that's going to be based on total time here at Tour of the Gila. So they'll take their time trial time yesterday, add that to today's time, and then the time that they end up on Sunday's Gila Monster Road Race as well. So fast times yesterday were just under 37 minutes. Bouchard Hall did knock some time off of his record last year of a 37:10, but this is where things stand after the individual time trial. Not a ton of big gaps, but unless someone like Catanzaro can beat Bouchard Hall in one of these stages by 9 seconds or more, which may be tough to do, Bouchard Hall set himself up with a pretty nice lead early on here. So unless there's a breakaway and Bouchard Hall can stay away, it's going to be tough for Catanzaro to bring back 9 seconds over the next 2 days, especially with Kevin Bouchard Hall playing defense, Alan, because when you're in this position, you ride a lot differently. Talk to me about how the tactics will change for Kevin Bouchard Hall starting in the GC lead versus someone who's trying to move into the GC lead on the second or third day.
Yeah, Kevin Bouchard Hall is in a pretty comfortable position right now, starting the race off with a time trial and then having 2 days of more endurance road racing. He's in a really good position with that 9-second lead. So all he has to do is really make sure that the race either stays together or that a rider like Catanzaro or Verslees is not able to get away and establish a gap. Anything that's more considerable than would lead to a field sprint. So you're not going to see 9-second gaps with a field sprint, everyone coming to the line at the same time. So he really just gets to sort of stay in the group, sprint at the end, and try to shut down any really threatening looking breaks.
Although there is a chance with the climb at the end today that we may see some separation. Bouchard Hall just going to play defense out there today. Keep it nice and steady and stay calm. So our men underway. We also had our para and hand cycling races take off just a little bit ago here in the Echelon Racing League. We'll go check in with our hand cycles first. You see some of our return favorites. Paul Kilgore up in the top left, and then week 1 winner Sander Kuhlman at the bottom with a dialed setup for Sander. He's got the table, the TV, and everything. Although, I gotta say, I do like Paul Kilgore's design and getup. He's got what I think is a turkey hat that's just come off. He's getting down to business here.
Also, just before we went live, we saw Paul Kilgore getting into position, and you could see his healer dog, maybe a blue healer, something like that, coming over, giving him a little bit of love before his race. So always got to root for anyone that has a dog on their live stream.
Paul, if you can hear us, we want to see the dog. You got to make an appearance. All right, out to racing again. These riders in 2 different virtual worlds. They're racing on a slightly different course, well, a very different course than our pro men and pro women, because there's so much climbing in these Gila courses. It doesn't translate well to the recumbents and hand cycles. So these riders using a marathon course, a little flatter, easier to ride, just more enjoyable for the para athletes. That was some feedback we got after seasons 1 and 2 of the Echelon Racing League. So we put them on the same course, but they don't interact. So they're in 2 different virtual worlds riding the same course. The hand cycles on your left and the paras on your right. They will be scored separately, also according to their paracycling category, either a C1 through 5 or H1 through 5 classification based on their para classification, which they go through each season. So it looks like a good group forming here in the hand cycling race over on the left-hand side. Nice little 3-up group locked in together. One of the coolest things, Ellen, of watching hand cycling in real life is the drafting that goes on, how close they get together. They have these things called bump bars on the back of these bikes, sort of in between those 2 rear wheels. And this is what it really looks like. They ride this close together in the real-life groups. It's amazing how close they can stick together.
It is amazing, and as someone who has never hand cycled, it's really hard to imagine being in that position and being able to be comfortable riding so closely together. It doesn't seem like it doesn't seem as visible as it does when you're riding a little bit more upright. So really, really cool to see, and also really cool to see just how realistic the virtual racing is becoming. I know we talked about this a little bit last night, and you can speak to it a lot better than I can, but how much work went into creating this sort of realistic drafting to be able to bring hand cycling to the virtual world.
Yeah, one of the reasons that we put the hand cyclists and the paracyclists in two different virtual worlds is that the more upright nature of the parabikes, the tricycles, they have a little bit of a larger frontal profile, so they create a larger draft behind them. Wouldn't be fair if hand cyclists were drafting off of a parabike that had a bigger drag coefficient. So that's one of the reasons they put the two different worlds out there, race them in two separate worlds, but seeing the energy savings here following these riders. Now, you see in the upper left corner of the gameplay screen, it'll show the riders how much wattage they're saving. Right now, this rider is saving somewhere between 30 and 50 watts. This is also one of the cool sort of gameplay elements of RGT. You can dial that in and try and get the maximum wattage saving possible. When that number goes red, you see in the very top left corner, that number every once in a while is flashing red. That means that the rider is wasting energy. They're doing more work, more wattage than would be needed to stay in formation. So the game will scrub that off unless you put a big effort in to try to get away. The goal is to try and hit your wattage at just the right amount. So you're not doing too much, you're not wasting any, and you don't want to go into that red zone if you don't have to. So you see that watt saving graphic popping up here following Sander Kuhlmann, the rider in second position in this group of three, but you see it pops him out of the group just a little bit here before they'll get back in line. So it's a game of finesse when you're in a group like this.
Yeah, and that goes for in real life racing as well as virtual racing. But one of the really cool things of virtual racing is just that ability to sort of see it, like you said, that gameplay element, making it just a little bit more like a video game where you're constantly trying to align that graphic with your effort. So it adds for a super fun thing to look at while you're racing and for anyone watching at home.
All right, so this is going to be Paul Kilgore on the right side of your screen. Kilgore going up against Joe Barony. We watched these two battle in previous weeks of the Echelon Racing League. There's Paul back in the pain cave. Hello, Paul. Got the New York State champion jersey hanging on the wall. The matching iPad. Looking good. You see some of the unique modifications on a lot of these bikes. The shifter on the right side for Paul here. We talked about how much work goes into setting up these bikes, getting it dialed in just right for each unique athlete. You'll see a lot of modifications made as well, but for the most part, there's a framework. Just like able-bodied racing, you have to stick within these UCI rules of what your bike can do, but there's also obviously leeway to accommodate the athletes and make sure that they're comfortable and fast on the bike. There's the state champs jersey. And a race across Alaska medal too. How cool is that? That sounds like a good one. Sounds like a tough one, but a good one.
That's a good eye, Brad. I hadn't noticed that medal until you pointed it out. I'm sure there are a lot of stories that Paul could share with us from that event. A little signal of the hand says that there certainly are.
This is the wall of a man who's seen some things on the bike. That's for sure. So Paul out there keeping it steady. Again, trying to chase down Joe Barony, your leader in the virtual para world. That group of three still together over in the hand cycles. It looks like we got a little group moving away from the elite men's race. These two up top. So it looks like Verslees, Roca, and Swart away. Smart, check that. So this is a dangerous group. We've been watching Verslees, the early attacker that started this move. That is national champion Mason Roca, wearing the Stars and Stripes jersey up the front of this group of three right now. So when you start seeing names like this go into a breakaway, and you kind of start measuring the chances of this breakaway working. And when it's one guy away, you think, not great. Still got a long way to go. One rider, he's going to need some help. But now he's got the national champion up there helping him. At what point do these riders 330 meters back maybe start taking this one a little more seriously?
Yeah, I think that, the next little bit is going to be really critical for the peloton deciding whether or not they're going to want to bring this group back. Having national champion Mason Roca as well as Verslees, who was third last night in the time trial, that's definitely going to be threatening for a rider like Kevin Bouchard-Hall, who I'm sure is very motivated to maintain his lead, but only 9 seconds over second place, so he's a little bit of wiggle room, but not nearly enough to let this break go completely clear.
Verslees was hitting his keyboard right there. I'm not sure if you just saw him reaching over onto that table to his left. He was using the chat feature, and one of the other innovations in RGT is something called proximity chat. So now that these guys are together in this breakaway, they can now talk to each other. There's a chat feature on RGT that only applies to the riders around you. So just like in real life, these guys can now have a private conversation in the breakaway, try and get some cooperation or whatever goes on in a breakaway, and either try and work together or not, depending on what the guys say. So
that's really cool, and just another element making it just feel so much more like the in real life racing.
I think I saw Roca trying to see if he could get back to his computer to key his mic. I don't think he has it set up, but he could hear Verslees talking. So this is like when you get stonewalled in a breakaway. You're like, you want to work together, and the other person is just staring straight ahead, ignoring you like you don't exist. You could play some mental games out there.
I think each of these riders are playing plenty of mental games on their own. We spent a good bit of time last night talking about just how much mental strength is needed to be able to put in an effort like this, riding alone in your pain cave. So I think each rider may be a little bit appreciative of what their fellow competitors are going through in their own race.
This gap is growing. They took this up to just over 500 meters now. They were right around 300 last time we saw them, and this is why Verslees putting in big efforts on the front, trying to keep this group moving. And Smart and Roca happy to oblige, but they are more than happy to let Verslees do all this work on the front. So this lead rider doing a little bit more work than second and third place. Not a ton right now. They could close those gaps a little bit more, but right now Smart and Roca would both be saving, let's say, 10 or 15% of their energy here.
Yeah, and if you look at the colors on each of the riders' names, you can see that both of them are in the pain to capacity zone, and it actually looked like Roca was struggling to keep the pace with our two leaders, so he's off screen right now. He might be easing up just a little bit, but I think that we're starting to see a lot of dynamic motion happening in the front of this group.
Yeah, this is far from a calm breakaway up the road, that's for sure. I think Roca just getting dialed in, showing a little bit of experience there, I think, getting back on. It's really easy in this game to overcompensate for a gap, right? You see a small gap open up, you go as hard as you can to try to close that down. By the time that gets into the game and the rider responds, and there's a little bit of latency or lag associated there, it's really easy to go right past the group that you're trying to get in. And so you want to ease on to that power. And I think that's probably what Roca was doing, just sort of testing the elasticity of his power ramp and getting back up to the group. So no reason to believe that he would be getting dropped out of that group this early. I think Roca's definitely strong enough to hang with these guys. I think just trying to smooth out the power profile as opposed to some big peaks.
Yeah, that's a really, really good observation, because when you're watching these avatars, it's really hard to gauge just what their effort is looking like. That's why our live stream cameras on Zoom are so incredibly valuable. But otherwise, like you said, it's hard to gauge what Verslees and Smart may be doing for Mason Roca. So to be able to play that a little bit more coy and be able to come back without overdoing it is something that's going to help him go the distance in today's race.
Now, the other thing, as we're monitoring this gap, you have to think about the undulations of this course. This may be artificially inflated or deflated, depending on whether they're on an uphill section, a downhill section, whatever that is. Again, doing an abbreviated section of the Mogollon course out there today. They start just outside of Silver City. It's not really until the end that the major climbing kicks in. There's this brief little section right here, but you can see it off in the distance as you approach that final Mogollon climb. And right about here, if you make this right-hand turn off of the main road, and then it's pretty much non-stop climbing to the top. The Velo Viewer view there showing some orange and red sections at the finish. This one hurts. These are the cattle grade sections that Jack was talking about at the top of the show. Not only do you have to deal with the uphill, but you got to deal with the tough road surface too. It is far from pristine pavement up there. You're talking about some gravel, some loose dirt. Makes it just that much tougher on the way up, Ellen.
Yeah, that profile really does a good job showing just what these riders have to look forward to, if you will, later on in this race. So this type of gap now looking like it's a couple hundred meters ahead of our lead group. It's something that when they get to the base of that climb can either continue to go up or will very, very quickly come down. And that's sort of the tough part of being in a gap, is sometimes watching how quickly it can get dissolved when the time is right. But it also could be an advantage to have a small group working together at the base of that climb.
Hey, you could almost sag climb it with a group like that if you get a big enough gap, which means that you know you're going to lose time on that climb with a big group behind you. But if you give yourself a 2-minute lead, you lose 30 seconds every kilometer, whatever that is, you still end with a gap and can still try and win. So maybe those guys just trying to build up as big of a gap as they can before they get to the base of the climb here. Following Scott Catanzaro right now in this group. Look at Catanzaro's power profile, up and down, up and down, up and down. He's in this group, and so he can afford to drop that power down to zero. There are sections here where you'll be able to just roll in the group. You will barely need to pedal at all. So Catanzaro's power profile going to look significantly different than those three guys up the road in the breakaway who are staying in that red-orange power zone, keeping it on the gas. Things will be a little different for these guys back in the field, although it does look like he has slowly ramped up the power. Now look at the steady uptick in his power as Catanzaro, I think, is starting to realize that if this breakaway is going to come back, he might have to contribute at the front of this group. So he's kind of lifting the tempo, lifting the overall power here, and seeing if they can't bring that gap up to those three guys down a little bit.
Yeah, he's still looking so composed, but as we know, it can be so hard to gauge just how hard a rider is going. Looking at them, expecting to see a certain effort on their face isn't always the best way to tell just how hard they're going. Some riders with much more of a stoic poker face than others, but all of our racers now within 20 miles or less to go. So things are going to start to, I think, get a little bit more urgent, knowing that this gap is not coming back on its own.
Look how the shape of this group is changing too, how it starts to string out a little bit. That's another really realistic thing on RGT. When the pace starts to pick up, you see the group string out into this more single file formation. Part of that is because they're on a climb, and riders like Walter Claes here are now getting to the front. The Belgian putting some big power in here as he's going to try and bring back a gap that is shrinking down to right around 300 meters. But again, it's hard to tell with the distance because sometimes the breakaway can be on an uphill, the field can be on a downhill, and so that would kind of artificially deflate the gap. But we know those guys have at least some time, enough that some big names are getting worried back in the field.
Yeah, you can see riders jockeying for position a little bit more, so a lot more surgy power happening than some of the really, really flat and smooth power profiles that we saw earlier on in this race. I wouldn't be surprised, especially with such a tough climbing finish, to either see someone in our breakaway launch an attack just as they're about to be brought back, or to see a counterattack from another member of the groups, perhaps Kevin Bouchard-Hall or Catanzaro, being able to launch a counterattack once they bring back our breakaway, because I think going into this climb with a gap could really change the overall standings of our general classification.
Some pain cave innovations here with Jakob Bjorklund. I saw the towel, which is clipped to the desk. That's a new one for me. It's like it kind of keeps it out of the way. It's got the water. And then I also got to give credit for there you go. See how it's hooked onto the desk there? And then I got to give Jakob credit. The full zip jersey, still zipped up. My man. Taking
Jakob is either a master at thermal regulation or has a very, very cold pain cave, which I think we could all envy.
I think that's his gaming computer next to him with the RGB lights inside. Those things will produce some serious heat if you're not careful. Steady rotting here in the group. Really not much changing in this field. I think there's a few sort of generals that have made their way up to the front. That kind of happens. You'll have riders sort of take charge of the group and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's the wattage we're going to set. Back up to the leaders. They definitely got this one figured out. Smart, Roca, and Verslees working really well together. Anytime you see these guys locked in, this group riding so tightly together, but still doing some heavy, heavy wattage, I would be real worried if I was back in the field right now.
Yeah, these riders definitely have a very, very vested interest in keeping this gap solidified. You can see it pop up on the screen, doing upwards of 5, 6, 7 watts per kilo at a time. If you weren't with us last night, we talked about watts per kilogram. So watts measure just how hard you're pushing down on your pedals, but if you're a heavier rider, you're automatically going to be able to do more watts than a lighter rider. So watts per kilogram of body weight is how we sort of equalize it to be able to say, this is how hard you're pushing down on the pedals with your body weight. So sort of the true equalizer out there. So seeing upwards of 5, 6 to 7 watts per kilogram is absolutely nothing to sneeze at. So you can just tell how hard these riders are going, seeing numbers like that.
Oliver brought out the auxiliary towel. He's got the secondary towel around the shoulders now. It's your breakaway towel. It's like the rally cap in baseball.
Some of these riders might need to start using like tear-offs in motocross or downhill racing with the goggles, but they're going to need tear-off towels. They said, I sweat through the first one, going to tear that off and go to the second.
He's got the treadmill. He's doing some cross training, getting ready for cross season. He's got the treadmill, do some running. And I think that is one of those Dyson fans down below him. That's some dedication.
You can see the cord just to his right, and that shelving unit looks like it's rocking. You have to imagine that it's getting such a strong breeze that it's starting to shift side to side.
I don't know, the way this guy's riding, he may be moving the foundation of his house from the basement right now.
Maybe that's why those ceiling tiles came out. There was so much movement.
They did not build this house to Verslees spec.
Too much wattage would have to be my estimation. And looking at the pace of this group, that actually may be less of a joke and a little bit more of a serious conjecture.
Still 25K of racing to go for these guys in the breakaway, so plenty of time for the field to bring him back. I think at this point it's really just about managing this gap, keeping it within striking distance, because it's really all going to come down to that final climb. Whether you start that climb with a minute, 45 seconds, probably even 30 seconds, not really going to make much of a difference. I do expect some riders to be able to come up to these guys. All three of these guys probably won't make it to the line together. That climb is hard enough that I would expect some pretty major separation up at the front. They are building that lead, though. This is the biggest gap that we've seen all day. You see the distances on the very far right of the totem on the left side of the screen, showing just over 700 meters ahead for these guys. They measure a distance in the virtual world here instead of time. It's just a little easier for the riders because they're looking at the riders in front of them. You can see them a lot better in the game, and so the distance measurement just makes the gameplay a little more fun for participants, whereas normally on the road we'd measure time, but it's easier to do it with distance.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, Brad, it's so hard to estimate just what these gaps will look like once they get onto the climb. It's going to be a little bit less important to have that draft once they start on that upward trend and they start to do this final tough, tricky climb. So having these riders together obviously right now is a big advantage, but probably won't be quite as important and something that riders aren't going to work to maintain as much once they get onto that uphill.
The thing that you really look at here if you're in the field, and this is something that you wouldn't have in real life, but one, you're monitoring the gap. You're always trying to look at how far ahead those riders are. But on RGT, you can see the power that they're doing too. And so the game here is really about matching or exceeding the power of those riders up in the breakaway. When you're in the field in real life, you would love to know what watt per kilo those riders in the breakaway are doing, because you could just do one more and that would be enough to bring you back. But obviously it's a little harder to regulate that on RGT, but that is one difference between in real life racing and virtual racing. You can now try and match or exceed the power of those guys as opposed to just speed or distance that you'd be getting from the commissars or referees in real life. Also, you get much more accurate timing data here. In real life, they do it with motorcycles. They'll put two people on the radio and they take marks from out on the road. They'll just find a random landmark like the red mailbox or a house with a weather vane. You'll hear all these crazy calls over the radar, and they basically just mark when that group passes that landmark. So you'll hear red mailbox in 3, 2, 1, and then 30 seconds or a minute later, you hear the field go by that red mailbox, and that's how they take time checks on the road.
I'm really processing that information. Having raced on the road a good bit, feels like everything I've known up until now has been a lie.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of technology to it, to be honest. And then to relay that to the riders, if you're not familiar, the way that Ellen would have gotten that information is basically on a whiteboard that they go to Walmart and buy.
Yeah.
Or write those times in and then hold it up so you can see it. I'm sure in the future we'll have Google Glass or heads-up display, whatever, some fancy glasses, but that technology hasn't quite hit the mainstream yet.
You know, as they say, Brad, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it really works just fine as long as we have a very brave commissaire willing to ride on the back of the motorcycle and hold a whiteboard to deliver that information.
Verslees back on the headset. I'm not sure if he's using, see how he reaches and touches, sort of keys the mic. I'm not sure if he's talking. Some teams will have a like a private Discord channel where they'll talk with just the teammates, and sometimes they'll use the proximity chat here. I'm not sure if he's chatting with teammates or on the proxy chat. Nice international breakaway here too. Smart out of the UK. Then the North American contingent with Roca and Verslee. I hope Smart did the early time trial session yesterday for Any European riders with a 6:30 p.m. Eastern or 8 p.m. for the Pro Women's start? That could have been a late night for the Europeans, so most of them did yesterday's morning session.
If he did the evening session, it seems to be working for him. All three of these
Just stay up
riders
all
doing
night,
a-
party through the night.
Yeah, he's just keeping that energy going all the way through to the finish, and then he'll sleep until tomorrow's start.
Gap came down a little bit. They did successfully bring back about 100, 150 meters, and I do think that number's good because they're on a flat section of the course right now, or a mostly flat section. So there are going to be a lot of guys in this group right now that now that this breakaway is gone, there's kind of a reset in the race, Ellen. Once the breakaway gets established, things kind of calm down in the group, and you either made it or you didn't on that day. You sort of let the cards fall where they may, and then once it becomes clear how the day is going to play out, sometimes you just sit in and you can relax for an hour, hour and a half until the road starts going uphill at the finish again.
Yeah, at this point, I think the finishing climb is going to be so decisive in today's race that I don't know if it would be worth it for any of these riders to try to get across to that break right now. There is going to be a lot of shuffling of positions once they get to that finishing climb, and I think otherwise these riders just need to not let that gap get out of hand, but trying to bridge across may not be their best use of effort right now.
Neil Ostenfeld. I love your curtains, Neil.
Oh, those are very, very stylish.
He switched up from yesterday, did some interior decorating. The window is open. I can't remember if these curtains were here yesterday or not.
I think they were.
Okay.
'Cause
It
I
just
don't
looks,
think that we've
the
seen-
daylight, highlights the colors very nicely today.
I don't think that we've seen a cam from Ostenfeld so far today, and I'm recognizing the curtains, so I do think that they were there from last night.
Yeah, the window opened last night. The blinds open a little bit, but he is in the same spot. I know he's riding by the window here. Brian Hodges, the Wahoo Lacole team, saw him take a stage win in Echelon Racing League Season 2. This guy's got a winning pedigree. Racing in the cool comforts of the garage. Over to Brian Kellison. Kellison has one of my favorite setups. He goes with a green screen and everything. So he's got himself in this virtual world here.
Fully immersed in the virtual world.
How cool is that?
When we first logged on here earlier this morning, we saw Kellison still getting into position, but already had the green screen up and running, and it looked like he was nothing more than a floating head, which gave me a little bit of a shock. And then the rest of his body was later revealed.
Intimidating the other riders in the Echelon Racing League here. This is John Cooper in the XXX Racing Athletico St. Louis contingent. The partner of Jackie Godley. We'll watch this camera pan over a little bit later today over to Jackie's training setup just next to her partner John there. And over to Restart Racing teammate Mike Sarnecki. Oh, look at the old school hat. And the Black Diamond, expert mountain bikers only. I think that sign says over to his right. Restart Racing noticing most of the riders with headsets in. I think they do run quite a bit of communication on that squad. So would have been talking with the riders in the breakaway, maybe getting an update on how things are going back in the field, at least early on. Just gone under 20 kilometers of racing to go. Checking in with Ian McCarroll down in the basement. We saw this setup yesterday. McCarroll also sitting in this main group back here. And you see on the climb as things break up, you do have to start to get out of the saddle. You can see all the resistance on his trainer right now. It looks like he's pushing such a big gear, that low cane speed. It's because they're on a 6% gradient on the way up right now. So you can really see how those trainers respond to the in real life climbing that these guys are doing. It gets really, really tough when that resistance ratchets up.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that RGT and other platforms mimic the course that these riders are on. So for our virtual tour of the Gila, the riders are going to face more resistance on their smart trainers than they do when they're riding on the flat, which is really interesting, and why riders have to ride a certain type of trainer. They're not able to ride on the rollers, and they're not able to ride on the traditional rear wheel trainers, which always just have a good bit of resistance. These smart trainers are able to apply and reduce resistance depending on the undulation of the course, which is so interesting and very, very tricky to get used to when you first get on this type of platform.
Mohamed El Amani rocking the Morocco jersey. I wonder if he's watching his team playing the World Cup right now. Morocco versus Croatia in the third place playoff in the World Cup over in Qatar today. So hopefully he waits until the end of the race to check the score. Croatia up 2-1. No spoilers. But we'll cheer for Morocco.
This race finished as quickly as possible so he can log in and watch from home.
I truly feel bad for any Argentina or France fans. They're going to kick off at the exact same time our race starts tomorrow morning. So not sure if we have any French riders in the ERL, but they're up against us for the big viewership. So I feel bad for the World Cup, to be honest. Back up to the breakaway. Versli and Roca. Versli on the left, Roca on the right. Seems like this gap has kind of topped out. They're not really gaining a bunch of time, not losing a bunch of time, hovering right around 500 meters right now. So I think everyone is kind of bottomed out at this point, settling in. Certainly don't look to be putting in the big efforts right now. I mean, Roca barely moving his legs underneath him. Sitting in, got a nice coast going. Easy for me to say, not doing 337 watts right now.
You know, I'm really relying on the colors underneath our riders' names above the avatar in RGT to sort of be able to gauge just how hard our riders are going. So we're seeing a lot of greens, blues, and yellows. So you are correct, Brad, saying that it doesn't look like these riders are going super hard. Not to say that they're going easily, but very good indication of how hard they're working.
Still saving about 30 watts. We are on board with Smart right now, second rider in line. That's all the data that you see on this screen. You can also see which rider is highlighted on the rankings on the left side of the screen. They just have a slightly darker bar underneath their name. So Showing the real-time data for British riders. Smart up on the front right now. 7% gradient on the way up. This is one of the really cool parts about Tour of the Gila. This is what makes Gila so unique. Getting into this beautiful landscape outside of Silver City. It really is some incredible scenery. If you've never been out there, the riding is exceptional as well. One of the really cool parts of this course is tomorrow's finish heads up to a finish they call the Cliff Dwellings. It is a national monument up there that has protected some really cool history. We're going to learn a little bit more about that tomorrow, but I want to give you a quick preview of some of the cool stuff awaiting the riders at the finish of tomorrow's stage.
Welcome to the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument. Let's go look inside. The Gila Cliff Dwellings were established in 1907 by President Theodore Roosevelt, using the Antiquities Act to help preserve the cultural treasures found within the dwellings. The cliff dwellings were built by the Mogollon people beginning in 1276. Archaeologists believe it took 10 years to build the 50 rooms found between the 6 caves. This structure is the only two-story structure we see in the dwellings. Archaeologists believe that anywhere from 40 to 100 people might have lived up here in the cliff dwellings. The Mogollon people were farmers. They farmed corn, beans, and squash, most likely up on the mesa tops and down low in the valleys to account for seasonal variations in water. Here in the cliff dwellings, we have original pieces of corn that were planted, harvested, and eaten by the Mogollon people over 700 years ago. Archaeologists believe that the Mogollon people only lived here maybe 20 to 30 years before moving on. Where did they go, you ask? Well, I can tell you this. They most certainly did not disappear. Their descendants are the Pueblo people found in New Mexico and Arizona. Thank you for visiting. Hope to see you next year.
Got to give a shout out to Dana and Oliver, the National Parks Rangers out there at the Cliff Dwellings Monument. If you go out to do this race, you got to stop by. It's one of the really, really cool gems out there in New Mexico.
So cool and really, really mind-boggling to think, she said, in 1276 is when they traced those back. So one of the oldest sites that we could really behold. Definitely not something that you want to miss if you get to go to the in real life Tour of the Gila.
Still standing too, really speaks to the durability of those builds. We talked about some of the pottery. If you were with us last year in season 2 of the Echelon Racing League, we got to learn about some of the really unique pottery from the Nimbus people out in New Mexico. The oldest and largest collection of Nimbus pottery is located just outside of Silver City in a secret spot where they are still excavating to this day, uncovering new secrets day in and day out there at the Western New Mexico University. Gap coming down a little bit for these guys. They are normalizing right around 350, 400 meters. So I think riders in that field starting to lift the tempo. It looks like they are also starting to split that main group. I think the group that you're seeing on the right-hand side of the screen, this is like 20th on back. So there's been a split here. McCarroll caught on the wrong side of it. So we'll go ahead and say, I think 15 riders clear in that front group. So now we got 3 groups on the road, a group of 3, a group of 15, and then this group that we're looking at right now. See a few riders stuck in that gap in the middle, in between. This is a really, I would say, crucial time right now because you still have a little bit more flat remaining. You would want to be with a group getting on to the base of that climb, although they've already made the turn off the main road, so they are into the climbing section here, but I guess you might as well try and leave this group, go across the gap. 18th or nothing in this scenario.
Yeah, this is such
Big
a
name.
tough spot to be in. Go ahead, Brad.
Big names missing that group. You see Clay's here. Brian Hodges also getting split. So Walter Clay is going to be the last one to try to tack on to that front group. Take some guts to do this. Leave that main group. Try and go across the gap. This is a get rich or die trying scenario for Clays. And this is the group he's trying to join. So Persky, the last rider in here at 14. There's 3 up the road. That means 11 guys in this group with 3 in the breakaway. There's Bouchard Hall, yesterday's winner. Little less painful for Bouchard Hall today. He was deep in the box yesterday. Jersey off, hat off.
Less painful for now.
Yeah, for now, exactly, until that climbing starts. It looks like he is starting to lift this tempo. He's starting to step on it here and bring these guys back. Remember, he's got teammates in this group, so I'm wondering if maybe there's a cat and mouse situation with the early leader trying to get away. Here's Scott Catanzaro, who also appears to be lifting his tempo. These guys coming to the front of the group. In fact, Catanzaro leading the way at the front of the main field. And again, with just 11 riders left in this group right now, you're going to start to run out of riders that can help. You'll run out of riders that can contribute here. There's only a few guys left, I would say, in this group, and Catanzaro and Bouchard Hall are 2 of the biggest that will have some responsibility. Ellen, I always compare it to going out to dinner. You always look at the richest person at the table to pay first, right? When the bill comes, sort of same thing goes in the field. Whoever's got the most to lose, whoever's got the strongest in the group is generally expected to do the chasing.
Absolutely. So I think all eyes are going to be on Kevin Bouchard Hall saying, you're the one who has the lead to sacrifice. So we're going to wait for you to really start to put your neck on the chopping block here. And you can just see the difference. We have our breakaway on the left and our chase group on the right. Just as I say that, we're starting to see a bit of a difference happening with Verslees taking the lead on the left, but previously it looked like that group was going a lot slower and just riding more easily than our chase group. So having a lot of dynamic attacks happening in both of these groups at the moment.
I'm watching the average wattage here. You can see how much, it's about 100 watt difference between riders sitting in the main group and riders in the breakaway. These on the left side of the screen, you see the breakaway rider. Verslees has been averaging a little over 400 watts for the most part. These guys barely touching 400 back in the main field, but they've got a dozen riders around them, so a little easier for these riders back in the main group. I still think this is advantage Bouchard Hall and Catanzaro. Remember, these guys in the breakaway are going to start feeling it at this point. They've been at it just under an hour, 54 minutes of elapsed racing. At this point, the difference between doing 400 watts for 54 minutes and 300 watts for 54 minutes is pretty significant.
It is, and there is an equation that I don't know off the top of my head, but we would be able to calculate just how many calories difference between doing 300 watts and 400 watts for an hour. So the riders that are in our lead group will need to be fueling to be able to sustain this effort all the way to the finish.
Catanzaro did 300 watts for 54 minutes, and now he's going to do 500 watts for the next 10 minutes to try to catch up to these guys as Catanzaro goes into the red zone here, putting this field on notice. This is a major turning point back in the field right now. You can see the separation. Bouchard Hall, the only guy able to get up here onto Catanzaro's wheel. So Catanzaro has lit the fuse back in the main group right now, and Bouchard Hall trying to cover with Bjorklund, Kopsey, and Walter a little further back, trying to catch on to this train leaving the station right now. The 11 a.m. Scott Catanzaro Express now boarding.
Yeah, if there's a group going up the road trying to bring back our breakaway, and it has Catanzaro and Kevin Bouchard Hall trying to bring back a chase group, including Mason Roca, our national champion, and our third place finisher yesterday for Sleece, all of those riders are going to want to pay attention because we have full representation at the front of this field. There is no one who has any benefit, if they can help it, to not be in the back of this field.
Bouchard Hall even having trouble getting up here just when Catanzaro lets off. That'll be enough to get Bouchard Hall up there. They did successfully drop a few more riders out of the group, so it wasn't separation off the front, but separation off the back. And remember, these guys are already onto the climbing section at the end of this course. They've already gone through the flat sections early on here, and now they're on to the turnoff of the main road. Just through that first orange section of climbing onto the slightly easier green section midway through this last climb. So they are just about to hit these last orange and red sections right now. So they've gone through the first sort of half of this major climb, and now as we get into the last 9 kilometers for our pro men out there, this is where the rubber meets the road on the way up to the finish. So it looks like things calming down in that group. Catanzaro has come back. Bouchard Hall locking in as well. Go check in with our para and hand cycling races as well. These guys are flying, getting down to it. You see your hand cycling leader in the bottom left going just under 8K to go. And then this will be Joe Bernie, your para leader, down on the bottom right, or right side of your screen here. So Bernie getting ahead of Paul Kilgore here. That'll be a win for him if he can hold on for the next right around 9K. And then McManus looking very good on the left side of your screen as well. Should give a shout out to Joe Bernier, a Paralympic medalist. He's been on the U.S. track team, going representing us twice now, including bringing home a silver medal. So nice to have some Olympic caliber athletes in the Echelon Racing League here. Meanwhile, looks like things changing in the breakaway up the front of the pro men's race. Smart is gone. Versely and Roca have now achieved some separation here. So the American and the Canadian getting rid of Smart here. This is Versely, your leader on course. And look at this slope, 8.6% gradient right now. Here we go on the way up to the finish for the last 7.5K.
Very, very impressive riding from Lucas Versely so far today. If you remember, Brad, he established his gap very, very early on in this race. Feels like almost from the moment our rider started, he had a lead. So just over 7 kilometers left for him to maintain that. I'm sure he hopes to be able to go clear from the start all the way to the finish, but I think a few riders, including Mason Roca, who's still trying to hang on, but starting to see a little bit of separation there as well. I'm sure we have a few riders that are going to want to bring him back just before the finish line.
Well, these guys are counting on a total implosion up at the front. That's the only way that this gap's going to come back. This guy's looking real good at right around 300 meters now. 20% gradient now. We talked yesterday about the steepest roads in America out in San Francisco, touching, I think, 30% gradient, we said. So he's pretty close to that on that little switchback, touching just over 20% gradient. Oy, 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 oy.
Yeah, and you can see just how tough that is. Our middle piece of data in the top left corner, that's going to say RPM, that's revolutions per minute, showing how fast or slow you're turning the pedals. And when you get to a section at 30% grade or anything in the 20s, that RPM is going to drop really, really low. So it's critical to keep the pedals turning as quickly as possible when you get that big dump of resistance on your smart trainer.
Had some folks weigh in yesterday in the comments section when we were talking about different gradients and things like that, including some building inspectors who told me about their local codes. They said a normal stairway has a 37% gradient. So there you go. You can kind of compare it to a set of stairs. That's your standard stair gradient. Now, I'm sure up in New England, like the basement stairs and things like that, those probably get a little above 37%. There are some homes out there, I think, that are grandfathered in. I've seen some sketchy stairs here in Pittsburgh as well. So, but I think the sort of standard practice right now, right around 37 degrees. So it's like riding up a set of stairs on your bike.
Super easy. Definitely doesn't make you feel like you're going to tip over backwards at all.
All right, Catanzaro still on the front here. Bouchard Hall and Zach Nair from the Project Echelon team getting up to tack onto the back of that group. Nair has an interesting story as well with that Project Echelon team. He is both an athlete and a coach. He's got a coaching business. He was actually hired as the ESports World Championship coach. He took the guys through strategy, which riders were going to go, as basically the director sportif out on the road for the ESports World Championships. He also has a vast knowledge of the physiological side of things. Obviously, as a coach, he understands wattage and TSS and watts per kilo and all these crazy terms that these bike riders use to measure their effort and get into the science of it. But Nair walks the walk and talks the talk. So he'll shift over to coaching duties after the ERL season here. So now Catanzaro, the last man. Roca has blown up. Really rough day for Mason Roca. Once that road went uphill, did not hang well with Verslee. So he has gone completely back and is now trying to tack on to the back of his group, just holding on for dear life as Catanzaro's in the driver's seat. And now this becomes a math game, Ellen. This is Verslee versus the world. And he's looking at a 500-meter gap with 5.8 kilometers to go. You have to assume he's going to lose time, so it's just a matter of whether the gap runs out before the finish line gets there.
This is really going to be a race to the finish line, as always, but especially with Verslee, with having a narrow but not impossible margin ahead of this group. But what a group it is. Catanzaro, Smart, Nair, Bouchard, Hall, and Roca, all trying to bring back one rider who has been off the front since the start of this race. So very, very hard to say whether he'll be able to maintain this gap inside a 5K to go with about a 500-meter advantage. So he can only afford to lose 100 meters every kilometer.
It's going to be close, and Catanzaro knows it. This guy can taste blood in the water now. The shark's starting to circle. Verslees up on the front. Catanzaro going big here on one of the easier sections, using that topography to his advantage now with down to 5K to go.
Verslee looks like he's trying to make something happen in the front of his bike.
Yeah, this must be a different device. He was reaching over to his left earlier. Sometimes riders will have one device for chat and one device for gameplay. What he may be doing now is switching his view, because remember we talked yesterday, a lot of riders will take that data off the screen or maybe have a first-person view so they can get in the zone. Now you need to start thinking about tactics. Now it matters where those riders behind you are. So I think he's switching from riding my own race to now racing against this group: Catanzaro, Bouchard Hall, Smart, and Roca.
Very good observation, Brad. That would be a really important piece of data for him to have, to know just how far behind him that chase group is going to be.
Gap down to 370 meters now. Remember, it was 500 when we first started tracking this gap. Under 4.5K. This is going to go right down to the wire. This would be a scenario on the road where all of these riders need to cooperate. The chasers need to make sure that they're all on the same page. Otherwise, they're going to be racing for second place on down.
This is certainly going to be an exciting finish no matter who comes out on top, because we have our top 3 leaders so far in the virtual tour of the Gila, all represented at the front of this group for Slee, Catanzaro, and Bouchard Hall, all still within contention of the win today. So we could see a big shakeup of our overall standings depending on who comes out first in this finish.
Gap down to 250 meters now. Versely still losing time. 3.7K to go on a 9% gradient. This guy's wishing he could have some of those watts back that he was spending at 10:15 this morning. Here we are an hour 10 later, and it's time to cash those checks that he wrote. Chase group dwindling too. This is down to Catanzaro, Bouchard Hall, and Nair. Everyone else gone. Goodbye Smart, goodbye Roca, goodbye Bjorkland. So now it'll be these 3 guys giving it a go, with Next, Restart, and Project Echelon leading the chase.
We're starting to see Versely bringing his wattage back up a little bit, but it is nothing compared to Catanzaro. Looks like at times Versely was doing an entire watt per kilogram lower than Catanzaro, so that does not bode well for him maintaining this 200-meter lead with still 3.5 kilometers left in this race. He is going to have to find 6th gear to be able to maintain this gap for the rest of this very, very strenuous climb.
Catanzaro has to be careful that he doesn't go too hard to close this gap. They're doing the math just like us, trying to figure out how they can make that catch just in time, because if you try and close all of that right now and say, I'm going to catch him before 1K to go, you're going to blow up too, and then these riders behind you will be able to go past. So it is a fine art walking this line of trying to reel back Versely's here. I heard someone once compare it to sport fishing, Ellen. When you're reeling in a big fish, you don't do it all at once. You let the fish wear themselves out. You just keep some tension on that line, let them run, and then reel them back in when you feel some weakness. So I think that's what they're doing with Versely here, trying to reel in the big tuna out there right now.
Well, if that's their objective, they've definitely done a good job of it. They have left Versely off the front of this race, solo and with company, for the entire hour and 10 minutes that we have been racing. So I think that he is starting to tire. Still holding a 200-meter advantage. That distance is a little bit steadier. We're just about to go inside of 3K to go. It's not impossible, but Kevin Bouchard Hall now doing, it looks like 7 watts per kilogram for a moment. So I think that Kevin Bouchard Hall can really start to see Versely, whether literally or just figuratively. I think that he's going to do everything he can to bring this rider back.
The odds makers in Vegas are furiously updating the boards right now with each pedal stroke. This one really could go either way. Now looks like Nair coming off the back of this group, because Catanzaro and Bouchard Hall stepped on it, and they're going to bring that under 200 meters down to 190 now with 3 kilometers to go. See how Bouchard Hall and Catanzaro stay together. No reason for them to separate out. Catanzaro trying to get back on it. Bouchard Hall going to contribute a little here. Now remember, that'll give Catanzaro a chance to draft, save a little bit of energy. I think Catanzaro has been doing the most work out of this group of three between himself, Bouchard Hall, and Zach Nair in that group. Gap up to 230 meters now, so it stopped running. And now things looking better for Verslee on the front. I was liking the chance of the chasers to get this done, but I may be changing my mind at 2.6K to go here.
So Brad, we've talked about it a little bit already. We have Kevin Bouchard Hall, Catanzaro, and Verslee, all of our top three leaders so far in our overall standings. Can you tell us, is there a time bonus for winning, or is it purely based on time?
And no time bonuses at the finish here, so this could move Verslee, if he holds on to this gap, up ahead of Kevin Bouchard Hall and Catanzaro in the overall. This is why GC timing is so interesting, because now it not only matters if Verslee wins, but by how much he wins. That will affect the overall timing. Here's where things stand going into today's stage. Bouchard Hall with a 36.49 on stage one. That'll also be his overall time. So Verslee with a 37.12 is going to need 23 seconds. So if Verslee can win by 23 or more, that'll put him into the overall lead heading into the final day tomorrow. And that's right around where things are, though it is coming down now to 130 meters. He lost a big chunk in the last minute or so as they go under 2K to the finish now.
It's going to be a tall order for Verslee to be able to win with 23 seconds over Kevin Bouchard Hall, but this definitely could shake up the standings. And like you talked about, Brad, you don't reel the fish in all at once. You do it bit by bit, and this could be good for Verslee to be able to take just a little bit of time out of Kevin Bouchard Hall for that advantage going into tomorrow's final stage.
It's a good point. You don't have to do it all today. Take 10 seconds back today, 13 tomorrow. There's your 23 right there. So it's a game of consistency for these guys. Verslee just trying to hold on to as much time as he can off the front here. And Bouchard Hall knows it. He's going on the attack and looks like he has left Catanzaro behind. Big gap between Bouchard Hall and Catanzaro. So the man with the most to lose, your GC leader, goes on the attack now to try and defend that GC lead.
This is very, very assertive racing from Kevin Bouchard Hall. We talked at the beginning of today's race that all he had to do was sit pretty till the finish and sprint at the end. I can't think of a race that could finish more differently than how we talked about at the beginning. Kevin Bouchard Hall really taking this race by the horns. He's going to want to win, and win with an outright advantage.
So getting a look at what Bouchard Hall is going to be seeing. Not sure if he can see. Oh, there he is, just up the road. You can just barely see Verslee. And Ellen, talk about what this means as a rider when you can finally see that rider that you've been chasing all day. What's that feeling like?
Yeah, it's so thrilling. I actually remember one time it happened to me in real life racing on a mountain bike race, and I was so excited that my feet went numb to finally have brought this rider back after a long day out on the race course. So for Kevin Bouchard Hall, he's going to be able to see Verslee now. That really, it makes it so real. It makes it feel attainable. In real life racing, you can also see just how hard the rider is going. So he doesn't have that advantage of having Verslee in his sight right now with the avatar, but he's able to periodically see him in Zoom, I believe. So he's going to be able to gauge just how much energy or how little energy Verslee has left in the tank with 1.3K left until the finish.
Kevin Bouchard Hall, the captain, out fishing today, trying to reel Verslee in, down to 1.3K to go. He's got him inside 100 meters now. This one will come down to the line. I still can't call it at 1.2K. Somebody call the gas company and make sure that they stay away from this guy's house. Really important for Bouchard Hall to stay steady here, too. Going to be really easy to try and jump right now and say, I can smell him. I might as well go close the gap. But then you got to hold that gap for the last kilometer, 800 meters, 700 meters, whatever it is when you make the catch. So I think Bouchard Hall wants to do it just at the very end. You don't want to be with Verslee any longer than you need to. And this will be the 1K marker under the Flamme Rouge. And now both guys preparing for this last kilometer. Up to Mogollon here. There's the switchback. 800 meters to go for Verslee now. Gap is at 70 meters for Bouchard Hall. I don't want to jinx this one too early, but I think Verslee can do this.
Verslee's certainly going to try. Very, very interesting to see the difference in Verslee's heart rate from Bouchard Hall. We're seeing Bouchard Hall right around 160 beats per minute. When we last saw Verslee's profile, he was at 190 beats per minute. So he has full-blown hummingbird heart going on the front of this race. Around 600 meters to go, 39 meters separating them. So it's still anyone's race.
Bouchard Hall into the red zone. Verslee looks calm as ever up there for a guy being chased by a eSports World Championship team member. Verslee down to 490 meters. I think Bouchard Hall is going to get there. In fact, he is about to get into the draft of Verslee, and I think once that happens, it's over. You see that indicator showing how much he's got to make up. He is 26 meters away from being in the draft of Verslee right now. 28 now. It's going out a little bit. He's just got to get there. With 330 meters left, I may have spoken too soon.
Yeah, you can see just about to go off screen. Verslee had a big dip in his power for a second. I think that's when we were seeing that gap start to come down. Bouchard Hall threatening to get into his draft. But it looks like now he is back and he's pedaling harder than we've seen him in the last maybe even kilometer, getting up to 6.1 watts per kilogram. So 200 meters left in this race. Kevin Bouchard Hall still in contention, but not quite able to get on Verslee's wheel.
Look at Verslee's bike rocking side to side. Now he's locked in, head down for both of them inside the last 150 meters now. Verslee holding on to a 60-meter gap. Call it 50 as they get to the line here. Call it 40 as Bouchard Hall tries to get there. And doesn't look like he's going to get there before they hit the line. Verslee will hold on for a stage win on day 2 of the virtual Tour of the Gila. Kevin Bouchard Hall will hit the line just behind him, about 20 meters behind. Not going to be enough to move Verslee up into the GC lead. Bouchard Hall only loses a couple seconds on the day. All things considered, Ellen, if you're not going to get the win today, that was an incredible defensive GC for Kevin Bouchard Hall.
It was very, very good defense for Kevin Bouchard Hall, and especially without any time bonuses to be gained by the win. Pretty great strategically to be able to just really only lose a couple of seconds in his 23-second advantage over Verslee.
You see these guys both cracked after that final climb up to the top. Catanzaro in for third. This will be Zach Nair finishing up for fourth place. Remember, these are the remnants of a group that at one point was 11 riders, then went down to about a half dozen, and now they're coming in ones and twos. Bjorklund going to be through next for fifth place. He'll have Persky behind him in sixth, then Harner, Kopsey, Walter, and Kiradine rounding out your top 10 out on course right now. So remember, all of these riders not only looking at the day today, but they also have to obviously defend their GC position or GC time. I have a feeling outside of the top 3 or 4, we're going to see some major shakeouts after today, because now we're starting to get into 20, 30, 40, 50-second gaps. So if you had a good time trial yesterday and struggled today, that pretty much ends your GC ambitions, your general classification hopes at the virtual Tour of the Gila. But the alternate applies too. If you had a bad time trial yesterday, you can absolutely come back from that on these road stages. You lose maybe 10, 15, 20 seconds in a time trial, but you can make up 40, 50, 60 seconds on these road stages with a bunch of climbing. Just ask Verslee and Bouchard Hall out there today. So that leaves just one more day for Luca Verslee to try and bring back what is now going to be maybe closer to 20 seconds back to Bouchard Hall, but it can be done, especially on tomorrow's Gila Monster stage. They don't call it the Gila Monster for nothing. It's another tough day, bunch of climbing. He just needs that one moment of weakness from Kevin Bouchard Hall to steal that GC out from underneath him.
I do think Luca Verslee will have a harder time getting away after today's performance. He now goes into tomorrow with a major target on his back, so I don't think we'll expect to see him taking the lead from the beginning again, with these riders knowing what they know now about him.
Have to imagine there'll be a big old target on his back as well, sort of a fool me once, fool me twice scenario. That's a guy that you mark a little closer. When you see that separation first go tomorrow, you want to follow that wheel for sure. So I think you can add 2 to that list with Bouchard Hall and Verslee. They're going to have a real hard time getting away. If they do get the separation tomorrow, it's going to be on pure power, because everybody's going to want to be riding with these guys on the last stage. All right, so coming up on our final 10. Brian Hodges, Bernardo Gonzalez, all working their way in. These will be top 20 rides. Maybe enough to move them up into the top 10 on GC, but for a lot of riders, just happy to finish up the day. So that should put our top 10 in through the line. Obviously, we know 1 and 2 up at the top. 3 and 4 had a good battle as well with Catanzaro and Zach Nair, and then Jakob Bjorklund ending up 5th place on the day. So ended up just under 2.5 seconds for Kevin Bouchard Hall. All things considered, over a 30-mile race with that climb at the end. The fact that Bouchard Hall was able to reel that in within 2 seconds at the finish. Beautiful day of racing for Kevin Bouchard Hall out there today. Scott Catanzaro ends up 3rd and Zach Nair 4th. But it was all about Verslee. You see the average watt per kilo, the very right-hand column. Verslee paid for that solo effort out there today. 4.9 average watt per kilo, where Bouchard Hall, Catanzaro, and Zach Nair, 4.4, 4.6, and 4.6 as well. So certainly did the work out there today, but it all paid off in the end for stage 2 of the virtual Tour of the Gila. Let's go over to our SIS Zoom room, where Emma Watson has our race winner from today, a tired Lucas Verslee.
Thanks, Brad. I'm here with our victor for today. Lucas, tell me about that race. You started off on the front foot very early and you kept that momentum even when the group tried to catch up to you, especially at the ending. Can you tell me about this course and how it played to your advantages today?
Yeah, it's a really tough course. Obviously, lots of elevation today. We had 1st and 3rd in the GC coming from the time trial, so we figured we had some cards to play. So plan was to kind of make a move early, see if anyone would bridge over, try to get a break going, keep Kevin Bouchard Hall in the group behind. he was going to watch wheels. And then, yeah, if I got away, I got away. And if I didn't, KBH was there to take over. And yeah, we solidified a breakaway and held it, and KBH got second. So I'd say we executed it pretty well.
You talk about that last kilometer, that gradient is super, super hard to overcome. What was your mindset tackling that?
Oh, I was completely broken the last kilometer. I had nothing left. It was just close my eyes, know it was over in a few minutes, and just push as hard as I could, really.
And this is your first win this season in the Echelon Racing League. Can you tell me how this feels?
It feels awesome. I'm pretty used to coming up short on breakaways, so it's a good feeling to finally have one work.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out now.
Well, you didn't come up short this time. Can you tell me how you're going to celebrate today?
Maybe we'll order some pizza tonight for dinner, something like that. Or maybe after tomorrow's race.
Awesome. Well, I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much, and congrats on the win. Brad, back to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma, and congratulations to Lucas. You lose a whole lot more than you win in bike racing, and the same applies for a breakaway. It's going to fail a whole lot more than it succeeds. Mohamed El Amani, our Moroccan rider, coming in just in time to catch the end of World Cup match. I was looking to see if he had a TV going, catching the game. I guess he can go dedicate fully to cheering on Morocco now. Blodgett a little further back into 27, still inside the top 30 for these guys. See some really strong names on this list right now, including Mason Roca, down to 22nd out there today. Had a rough day on the climb. Blodgett, Meyer, Travis Samuel up here. So this course claiming some really, really strong talent today. It's also tough once you get dropped out of that group. It's really hard to keep that tempo up on your own. We talked about how much faster you can go looking at the rider up ahead of you. Same goes when you're watching the field riding away from you. It can be a little discouraging. So tough day. Meanwhile, our para and hand cyclists finishing up. You see your para leader down in the bottom right. It's going to be Paul Kilgore making his way to second place out there. I think Sander Kuhlman already in. And your hand cycling leaders over on the bottom left. Back over to Paul Kilgore here. Paul's been one of my favorite guys to watch on the SIS Zoom cams. One of our more fun riders, enjoying it out there, and also has one of the coolest setups.
A lot of fun things to look at in the background, and you can always hope to catch a glimpse of his dog and his reindeer hat.
I thought it was a turkey earlier. Maybe he did have a seasonal turkey hat, but bringing out the reindeer hat today, I love it, Paul.
You know, Brad, I don't know about you, but I often wonder if the riders can hear us while they're riding at home, but Paul makes no doubt about it. You can tell that he's listening, so great job, Paul. You're a very, very fun racer to watch.
All right, Paul, with just over 4 kilometers of racing to go, our hand cyclists finishing up. Looks like our first rider's already through. So watching the last few with right around 4.5K to go for them as our final riders finish up in the pro men. We're also getting ready for pro women coming up in just under 30 minutes from now. So I think good time to take a quick break here from the Echelon Racing League. When we come back, we'll watch your para and hand cycling finish and then get ready for pro women.
Come on, move. Of course, there aren't any spots. A few minutes won't hurt anybody. Thanks, Grandma.
Paralyzed Veterans of America works tirelessly every day to create a more accessible America. Let's leave the accessible spaces to the people who actually need them. Whatever the reason, excuses don't excuse. Join PVA and be part of the solution. Honor the spot.
Welcome back inside 3 kilometers for our hand and para finishers out on course. Kilgore on the right-hand side of your screen, going just under 2.5K to go. And then the remainder of our hand cyclists out there fighting for 6th, 7th, and 8th place on course right now. If you're just joining us, we did just have an exciting conclusion to our pro men's race where we watched Derek Bouchard-Hall try to catch Luca Versli and ended up just 2.5 seconds off at the line after closing what was at one point a 40-second gap at the bottom of the climb. Scott Catanzaro ends up 3rd, so not much going to change in the overall. Bouchard-Hall should still be good on general classification, but Versli gets 2 seconds closer to the 20-some seconds that he needs. So he's got his work cut out for him tomorrow. Heading on to the Gila Monster stage, what I'm most impressed with, Ellen, is how many riders had a watt per kilo average above 4.5 watts per kilo. Everybody put in a big workload out there today.
They certainly did. Lucas Versli with the highest watt per kilo out there at 4.9. So you can really see Kevin Bouchard-Hall played his race really well, doing almost half a watt per kilo lower on average than Versli to come in only 2.5 seconds behind him. So goes to show that sitting in the field, kind of playing his cards right and then going hard at the end seemed to pay off for him really well out there today.
I remember these all familiar names at the top of this list. One, because of the time trial yesterday, but also into our 3rd week of racing here in the Echelon Racing League. The first 2 stops at the Sunny King Criterium and then Momentum Indy back in November, working through our December 16th through 18th race slot, and then 3 more weekends of racing awaiting these riders before the championships on February 25th for the Echelon Racing League, coming up on Saturday, January 7th, and Sunday, January 8th, and then a couple weeks after the end of January before our final one-day race on February 18th, and then into the ERL Championships on Saturday, February 25th, where they race for the big one. All right, so as we get ready for our pro women coming up, about 20 minutes from right now, we're going to take a quick break here on the ERL, and we'll be back with more live racing from the virtual Tour of the Gila presented by visitsilvercity.org. We'll be right back.
My name is Dr. Alan Lim. I'm an exercise physiologist, and I've spent most of my career working with professional cyclists. For years, I've been getting riders to ride on static trainers that don't move. But now, with the Infinity technology by Ceres on the MP1 platform, you have fore-aft movement as well as side-to-side movement that ultimately greatly enhances comfort. Every single contact point can move in a more natural way, and over the long haul, what that means is you don't get beat up by your static trainer. With just that little bit of motion, you start to replicate what you feel in the outdoors, and that changes the entire experience. I think that one of the big reasons for that is that we're naturally tuned to want to move. Our vestibular system, when it's activated, ends up, creating, I think, a sense of harmony or joy that just isn't the same when you're not able to move. It's like the difference between a rocking chair versus a static chair. And a lot of it, I think, is about expectation, because when you get it on a bicycle, you expect it to move. And so when you get on the MP1 platform with the Infinity technology, you get that same level of movement. 6 degrees side to side, 9.5 inches fore and aft. And what that does is it creates an experience that is just so much more enjoyable, so much more fun than being on a static trainer. When you look at the design of the MP1 platform, it's not just designed for the H3 trainer by Ceres. It's also designed to be compatible with almost every new smart trainer currently on the market. So if you don't own the H3, but you have your own trainer at home, odds are this will be compatible with the MP1. Another unique feature of the Infinity technology on the Ceres MP1 platform is that it's best in class. You have 6 degrees of side-to-side motion and 9.5 inches of fore-aft motion. That's movement that specifically replicates what you feel outdoors, and there's no other competitor on the market that can simulate that type of movement. It's certainly not the kind of movement that you can get by just putting tennis balls under your trainer. You know, cycling isn't just about your legs and your lungs. It's also about being able to handle the bicycle, and that takes a lot of control in both your core as well as all of these small stabilizer muscles. On an indoor trainer that is static, you're just not getting any of that specificity. But with the Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform, you are able to use and have to use all of those stabilizers to control the bicycle. The net effect is that not only do you get a workout for your legs and your lungs, but you also get a workout for your core. The Infinity technology built into the MP1 platform creates the best-in-class movement for any trainer system. You've got 6 degrees of side-to-side movement, 9.5 inches of fore-aft movement, and the net result is way more comfort, way more fun, the ability to use your core or stabilize your muscles, and you've got a platform that is compatible with most trainers.
Stop 2 of the virtual tour of the Gila, and this is the rider that everyone will have their eyes on today. The legend of the Echelon Racing League, arguably one of the best virtual racers in the world right now. Jackie Godby, the winner of the Tyrone time trial yesterday, the current GC leader and your current series leader in the Echelon Racing League, getting ready to defend her third series of racing in a row here in the ERL. Ellen, it's one thing to be consistent in one season, but showing consistency the way that Godby has 3 years in a row really speaks to her talent today, and I know she is just eager to eat up these climbs today.
Oh, I'm certain if she attacks this race with even a fraction of the focus that she showed last night, I think that we will be in for a big challenge for the rest of our racers today.
All right, before we get started, our pro women just about 4 minutes out. Before we send them off from the start line, we have a special welcome from the mayor of Silver City.
Hi, everyone. I'm Silver City Mayor Ken Ladner, and I'd like to welcome you to our virtual tour of the Gila and wish each of you the best of luck. You will explore some of our challenging terrain outside of Silver City and experience why the Tour of the Gila has become such a classic and why we have some of the best road cycling in the world. We are also working hard to make sure Silver City is ready to welcome you back in person in May, where you will be able to experience firsthand the rest of our outdoor recreation. In addition to being designated as the gateway to the Continental Divide Trail, we also offer world-class dining, local art, and the friendliest folks you'll find anywhere. So enjoy the ride, and we'll be seeing you real soon.
Mayor Ladner showing off some of the beautiful scenery that the riders will get to conquer out there today. One of the really cool things about Silver City, too, there are so many different sort of microclimates out there. Even on the course today, you go through the green section in the valley, then you get up into the high plateau. It starts to get a little dry, and then even further up into the mountains, it really speaks to the incredible diversity of the scenery here at the virtual tour of the Gila. And of course, the one man who has made it happen for 35 plus years, Jack Brennan, every year down in Silver City, the key to making this thing happen. And he's got an address for our pro women before they start today.
Good morning, you all. This is Jack again, race director for the In Life Tour of the Gila. Today is a point-to-point race from Cliff, New Mexico, up to a cattle guard close to the mining town of Mogollon. Cliff is a farming community. It's been around for years and years, and it's right along the Gila Valley. So we're going to start kind of in the valley of the Gila River and then climb out. It's a small climb, kind of a long gradual ascent out of the valley, and then it's undulating until we get to the community of Glenwood, New Mexico. And then it's all going to change. It's kind of still undulating, some climbing up to our turn up to Mogollon. Then it's 7 miles of a brutal climb. The first 3 miles is up to what we call Whitewater Mesa. There's some 16% grades up to Whitewater Mesa. Then it's flat going across the mesa. And then you hit another cattle guard. And it's 3 miles from that cattle guard to the cattle guard finish at Mogollon. And that's when everything just cuts loose. The road is not improved. It is what it was probably back in 1920. There's sections of the road that's been unpaved for years and years. The turns are tight, switchbacks. But again, the climbing is just long and strenuous, and we'll see what happens when you get to the finish. Enjoy.
Jackie Godby doing a little pre-race dance warm-up, getting hyped, getting psyched, getting ready to go as they'll conquer the 30 miles of riding up to the Mogollon today. But as we saw in that pro men's race that just wrapped up, Ellen, the sting is really in the tail. Once that road starts going uphill, that is where this race is won and lost, really decided. So it's all about the scenario going on to the climb and then how well you can conquer those last two big uphill sections. So after watching that pro men's race, is there anything that they can do to try to bring back Jackie Godby on a day like today? I mean, is there any way that you can try and use this climb to your advantage with a shark like Godby out in front?
You know, I think with a shark like Godby out front, as you said, this is going to be a very, very hard race for the rest of our pro women's field. But I think the biggest takeaway that we can garner from Kevin Bouchard-Hall's second place finish is just how much time you are able to bring back on the front of this race with this really hard finishing climb. So not to say that any of this race is decided, but if you come into this final climb with a little bit of juice left in the legs, you may be able to bring back considerably sized gaps.
I'm really looking forward to watching second, third, fourth, fifth place on down battle. We have such a tight race in our pro women's field in the non-Jackie Godby category. It's been really, really fun. So today we watch Erin Ayala trying to defend that second place overall in the Echelon Racing League. They are warming up right now, getting ready to get down to it. Inside 9 minutes to our next race start, we're going to take a quick break here from the Echelon Racing League. And when we come back, it's stage 2 of the virtual tour of the Gila.
Come on, move. Of course, there aren't any spots. A few minutes won't hurt anybody. Thanks, Grandma.
Paralyzed Veterans of America works tirelessly every day to create a more accessible America. Let's leave the accessible spaces to the people who actually need them. Whatever the reason, excuses don't excuse. Join PVA and be part of the solution. Honor the spot.
So we can just go right to Welcome back. Final warm-ups underway before we kick off the Mogollon stage of the virtual tour of the Gila. Riders just about 6 minutes away from leaving the starting pen right now. Here's where things stand after the Tyrone time trial yesterday, where Jackie Godby put on a blazing performance with a 40:46 fast time of the day to Erin Ayala's 4:30 44.52 second place, and then the Beast Mode Rose team, 2 good rides from the German, Kim Miller and Julia Klein, in third and fourth place. But Ellen, I think these are the riders that we're really watching when you look at how close these time trials were between Ayala, Miller, Klein, McGregor, even Julia Valkenhorst, the third Beast Mode presented by Rose Rider. They could all have a good ride today. So I'm expecting this 2nd through 10th place finishes to be really well matched up when they get onto the last climb. But the question always remains, they can time trial well, but can they climb?
Yeah, that's going to be a big question today. Not nearly as much elevation gain in yesterday's time trial, and a lot of room for changes in our overall, but it's going to take a big effort to dethrone Jacqueline Godby's 3-minute and 54-second advantage.
We'll see if we see any wild cards out there today as well. Some riders will just completely write off the time trial. There's some riders that say, I just can't do this. I'm not a time trialist. I just don't have it in me. And so see if maybe they save themselves for the big climbing day today, up to that Mogollon climb. So again, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I think that's where the battle really is. Erin Ayala has more to lose than anyone else out there. A lot of pressure on her headed into week 3 of the Echelon Racing League. She has had her best season so far here in season 3. She was in the mix in seasons 1 and 2, but starting to win some field sprints here in season 3, and I think really kind of hitting her stride this year. That's Ayala in the very top right corner of our SIS Zoom room here. So before we get started, we have one more welcome from some special guests. Again, one of the really cool things about racing a Tour of the Gila is how welcome you feel when you come as a bike racer. I want you to meet one other person who helps make that possible.
Hi, on behalf of Visit Silver City, I welcome you virtually, all the cyclists and fans, and hope that we can welcome you in person soon. When you do come to Silver City, be sure to visit our historic downtown, which is chock full of galleries, artist studios where you can see artists working and potentially take a class and get involved. We have dozens of local restaurants, a brewery and a distillery downtown, as well as a historic theater. So there's lots to do both on your bike and off your bike, and we look forward to welcoming you soon.
That's Joni Griffin, the CEO of Sunny 505, helping out with the Tour of the Gila, one of the smiling faces that you'll see when you show up to the start line for the In Real Life Tour of the Gila. See some of our pro women warming up. We also have our men's B category getting ready to take off, so they will also run concurrently. They'll be in different virtual worlds, but we will be checking in with our men's B race out there as well, racing sort of alongside the pro women. So all the big names lined up across the top. Jackie Godby in the top left and Erin Ayala in the top right. 1 and 2 overall, getting ready to go head to head here. And again, we know that Godby the strongest when it comes down to raw power, but Ayala one of the best strategists, tacticians out there on the bike. So I'm really looking forward to watching that racing today. All right, inside of 2 minutes to our race start, that means it's time to welcome our official starter back to the Echelon Racing League.
I'm Howie Morales, the Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to the 2022 virtual Tour of the Gila cycling race. And I want to thank everyone for returning to this really special competition that is heart and soul to beautiful Southwest New Mexico. The Tour of the Gila is a great community-wide event that we are proud of here in the Southwest, my home. If you haven't visited us in person yet, I hope you will soon. If you've been here before, please come back and see us again. Make a plan to do it in the near future, and I promise you that you won't be disappointed. It is such a unique and beautiful area. Even though we are mostly out of the big scare of COVID, which was the impetus for this virtual race, I'm very happy that the great Tour of the Gila is going to occur again this year, both virtually and in person. For that, I am grateful to all the organizers and volunteers who make this race happen year after year. We really do appreciate you. I want to especially thank Jack and Brad for leading the efforts, and we are very excited to have a virtual platform that delivers an amazing real-life race course for this year's tour again. It's wonderful technology from the Echelon Racing League. They've done a great job again, and I think you will enjoy it. Don't miss all the live broadcasts of the virtual tour of the Gila. They will cover all the minute-to-minute happenings on the race course. I grew up and have spent almost my whole life in this community where the tour of the Gila takes place, in rural, beautiful Silver City, New Mexico. I live here today still with my family, and let me tell you, we are honored and excited to have all the national and international attention that the tour of the Gila brings. I have to make a pitch for coming to visit us. Southwest New Mexico is home to some of the most fascinating experiences, from the epicenter of the country's oldest wine-growing region to the nation's official wilderness area, to the world's first purpose-built commercial spaceport. Southwest New Mexico offers plenty to our spirit of adventure steeped in culture. And Silver City and the nearby region is home to 3 great national parks and monuments: the Gila Cliff Dwellings National Monument, the Prehistoric Trackways National Monument, and the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument. And on top of that, Silver City itself is also home to one of the oldest country's best and most charming Main Street America. Accredited districts getting the nationally recognized award that is bestowed to only 3 Main Street programs each year. So please, come back for the in real life tour of the Gila that will be held from April 26th through April 30th. Registration is already open. You can go to the tourofthegila.com website to register. So good luck, everyone. Have a great race. Hope to see you all soon. I'm Howie Morales, the Lieutenant Governor of New Mexico.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor Morales. Another one of the big parts that make Tour of the Gila so great. By the way, registration is open, as you heard Lieutenant Governor mention, 10% off through the end of the month if you register online right now. It's going to be April 26th through 30th this year. You can scan that QR code right there on your screen right now, and that'll take you to the registration page with all the details that you need. Sometimes, Ellen, it's good to just get that on your calendar. Get a goal in there early on. Commit to it so you got something to train for in these holidays. All right, meanwhile, separation up on the front. Godby, Miller, Ayala have already split 3 up on the front. And props for Ayala holding on to this one, already making the early split here. Balkenhorst a little farther back, and then McGregor, Rokkinen, and McMaster trying to catch on. Ellen, I did not expect to see this separation this early, but Miller, Godby, and Ayala on the attack here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see Godby going hard from the start, but awesome that Miller and Ayala both able to go with her. This would be really, really good for Miller and Ayala to be able to tack on to Godby's wheel, sort of solidify those podium positions early on and maybe do a little bit of damage control. They may not be able to take back the 4 plus almost 5 minutes that separate them from our race leader, but they could at least prevent further loss in the overall time.
Oh, and Ayala and Miller have to be thinking about the riders behind them, too. This could lock in 2nd and 3rd place for them. Heading into the last day tomorrow, they could afford to lose some time into day 3. So not only racing against Godby, but racing against all the riders behind them on GC. This will really be an art of how long you can hang with Jackie Godby today. And anyone that makes this selection is already having a successful day in my book. If you made it into this group, and you're riding with the queen, Jackie Godby, even if this race ends right now, you can be happy with this one.
Absolutely. Even just looking at the power that Jackie Godby is putting out from the start, you can just really see how strong she is. So being able to go with her so far in this race, just 4 minutes in, already a good effort to start off the day.
And I have to imagine those other names back behind are going to be little worried about this group of 3. But they are locked in. Nice to see Jackie Godby getting a little rest here doesn't have to do all the work in this front group. It's very rare that Jackie Godby gets to draft somebody on RGT. It doesn't happen often, so looks like they're letting Jackie relax a little bit this morning. Kim Miller, the German, up on the front on the Rose Beast Mode team. This has become one of the premier esports programs, not only in the country, but in the world. It's a German-based team, but they have succeeded in recruiting some of the best esports talent out there. So we see them on all the platforms, racing on Zwift and Rovi and everything else. But a well-dialed program as well for those Germans. This is Valkenhorst back in 4th place with that Beast Mode team. And looks like she's going to have some company. I love the seasonal decor of this one.
Really taking advantage of the bikes being in the living room, which many of us are very, very familiar with in apartment living. So if it's going to be there, it's going to double as a decorative centerpiece, is my interpretation.
It's almost like a tree or bush or shrub or something. Celebrate the holidays. I didn't even notice it was a bike at first. I couldn't even tell. A long exhale. When you look at the 46 kilometers of racing to go and already seeing a split out in front, that can get discouraging for these riders in 4th place on back. Looks like 3 locked in a chase behind them. This is going to be 4, 5, and 6 with McGregor, Ronkanen, and Valkenhorst. And then 7, 8, 9. Man, groups of 3 all over the place. That's the magic number today. Hildegunn Soli in that group, the Norwegian. Dealing with the time zone difference. Just after 6 p.m. over in Norway, 1800 in old time. And she's going to stay steady in this group of 3. So it looks like we're going to be looking at 3 groups of 3 on the front of this race. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then 7, 8, and 9 all riding together. Although Miller getting separated a little bit off the back of this front group. I think Godby was having a little too easy of a time. She said, I want to feel that hurt. I want to feel that pain. So she goes into the yellow and orange power zone here on our Ceres power meter. And that's going to put some space between Ayala and Miller. So things starting to separate out at the front with some really good racing unfolding here in the Echelon Racing League. Into our 3rd season of racing. We talked about the consistency of Jackie Godby and her 3rd year of racing here with the ERL. I want to bring in the Echelon Racing League Commissioner, Eric Hill, who's joining us remotely. He's watching some of his riders out there on the Project Echelon team out in racing. But Eric is also the commissioner of the league. I don't know how you do it, Eric, but you got to be proud to see how this league has grown over the last 3 years. Talking about the 3rd season, we're starting to develop some real stars, but I think you can lay claim to riders like Jackie Godby. We're seeing so many riders from the Echelon Racing League making the selection to the World Championship team, the Nationals team, so it's got to be exciting for you to see that talent.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. And just getting to know these riders, too, who they are behind the screen, and build those relationships with them. It's really, had me or grown my investment and interest in esports as a whole, and seeing these athletes be successful. So we're super happy that they're here and racing with us, and have helped us build us to where we are here in year 3.
Just watched our para and hand cycling races finish up. I know you guys have been working closely with RGT implementing not only those races, but we also talked about the avatars, getting the hand cycling and paracycling bikes into the game, a huge step forward for our para athletes. And obviously that seeks to serve the Paralyzed Veterans of America group that you work with. It's an important step in giving back. And I understand you guys are working on something new right now.
Yeah, last year we knew that we needed to get the hand cycle in there. It was the most obvious missing link or element in esports and visibility and representation for our para athletes. And so once we got that, we right away just what's our next step, and it was the recumbent trike. And after that, it'll be the upright trike. And the thing that I think we're extremely excited about this year is partnering with U.S. Paracycling and Cycling Canada to also host what we believe is the first ever esports national championships for paracyclists for both Canadian and U.S. athletes. So really groundbreaking stuff, and we're honored to be a part of it.
Eric, talk about how that work plays into the larger mission of Project Echelon, not only the race team, the Virtual Racing League, but talk about what Project Echelon is as a nonprofit.
Yeah, so Project Echelon, our mission is to educate, equip, and empower veterans through physical activity and self-discovery. So many of our veterans, when they come home, they lose part of their identity, right? The uniform was a part of them. The people that they served with was their community. And you feel disconnected from that, just as a professional athlete would when they retire and, they're distanced from the sport a little bit. And so we give them a new uniform to put on. We give them a new purpose, structure, routine, opportunity, and goals to focus on. And we use the sport of cycling and endurance sport in general as a tool to do that. And with our focus on the veteran community and our work with the Paralyzed Veterans of America, esports has really opened doors to make those sports even more accessible anytime, anywhere, and get people from across the world connected to help grow that community. Because I think it's no secret that there's a shortage of events for those men and women to participate in, and traveling far distances with that adaptive equipment is not only costly, but also very difficult. And so esports helps to remove a lot of those barriers.
That's what it's all about, putting more people on more bikes. That's what we like to see out there. Eric, from the two ends of the spectrum, talking about more people riding, but then you guys also have the elite racing team of Project Echelon Racing. You have been to this race in real life before at Tour of the Gila. Talk about how the experience on RGT lines up with racing a race like Gila in real life.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more daunting knowing that you've got these massive climbs at, the tail end of these races, and knowing that you're going to be kind of facing them on your own in the basement of your house, and not really, in person. It's just so much harder to get in that mindset of I'm going to suffer. And you can tell the guys that are really good at it, right? The Zach Nares, Scott Catanzaro, Lucas Verslees had an incredible ride today. I am absolutely blown away by the perseverance and grit that guy showed. Kevin Bouchard-Hall, and those guys have prepared themselves for moments like this. In real life, there's kind of that slow build to this climax at the end, and you can visually see it coming. And so being there in person is a bit different feeling with regards to the mental preparation that goes on, but the physical effort itself is quite similar. I was talking with Zach Nair today, and the final climb that he did today was about a minute 12 faster than last time he did the race in real life. So there are some pretty strong similarities with regards to the efforts that are being put in and the outcomes, the actual times that we're achieving these climbs in.
It's really incredible to see that technology continue to evolve and Project Echelon, a big part of it, making that more accessible to more people here on RGT. So, Eric, thank you for the work that you're doing with the Echelon Racing League and Project Echelon. We'll let you get back to it. I know you got busy weekends these days.
Well, thank you guys for making this fun to watch. I am home with sick kids today, and it was incredible to just spend my morning, kick back with them, watch the men's race and now the women's race. And you guys do a wonderful job, so thank you for keeping us entertained.
I'll sending healing vibes to everyone in the Hill household. That is Eric Hill, your commissioner of the Echelon Racing League. Thank you so much, Eric. You know, so many times, Ellen, we think of these athletes as bulletproof athletes and nothing else, but you got to remember there is a whole real life going on outside of virtual racing with sick kids and dogs that need to go to the vet and gas companies shutting off your power while they're doing work outside the house, all kinds of things.
Definitely a lot to be dealt with, and talking again about Jackie Godby. She is someone I'm sure intimately familiar with the sick kids scenario, as she is a double MD PhD. So she is currently, I believe, in residency. Maybe doing her final rotations, I think I was reading. So she is someone who we have so much to thank for taking care of some of our sick people.
Well, meanwhile, Erin Ayala riding her way into a comfortable second place. She has dropped Kim Miller back in third. And now at 39K to go, Ayala locking in for a long, lonely road to the finish here. Doesn't look like she'll catch Godby today, but she's really just got to worry about what's on her back porch, which is the German contingent from that Rose Beast Mode team. Meanwhile, you see some of our men's B-race competitors in the bottom pictures of this screen. They are running on the same course, but a different virtual world. So these are riders that not quite ready to race in the elite men's race, but as we said, trying to create as many opportunities as possible. So if you're not an elite racer, still a chance to race in the Echelon Racing League with our men's B category. Looks like Bozeman on the front of your men's B group here. And this is a good chance for these riders to experience this course too. We talked about registering for the In Real Life Tour of the Gila. That is one of the few races that also offers amateur categories across the entire week. So the pros race 5 days, but for an amateur rider, you can go out and do, I think it's a 4-day stage race for the amateurs, but the opportunity to do multiple days of racing for an In Real Life bike race is a really, really cool opportunity, even if you're not a pro. So this is an awesome training tool to be able to plug those courses in, train on those all year, and then go try and conquer it in real life. You're going to know exactly how long that last climb is. You're going to know what that feels like to climb for 12 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever that is. So it's a really cool chance to preview and survey courses. If you're getting ready to go on vacation, going to visit some friends, maybe got some holiday travel coming up, you can plug that course into RGT and see if you even want to attempt some courses. Look at some of our men's B participants in our SIS Zoom room. Pretty standard setups here, aside from the one set of TT bars. The interesting thing about time trial bars in these virtual races, everyone has them, but no one uses them because there's obviously no advantage to be had by being aerodynamic. For a lot of riders, it's just the bike that they're most comfortable on. The time trial bikes do have slightly different angles and geometry than a road bike would. So even if you are on the tops or the drops, as they say it here, it would still feel pretty close to being out on the road with the bike that you know and love.
Yeah, I think really the big key here is going to be the saddle and the position. So I think a lot of riders feel a little bit more comfortable in the stable position of those time trial saddles. Those are typically two prongs that sort of support your sit bones a little bit more without all of the frills and padding that you would have on a typical road or mountain bike saddle. Because the time trial position is a lot less dynamic. So you're not going to be moving around a lot once you get into position. So I think that's why we see riders like Jackie Godby opting for her time trial bike, even though she never goes into full time trial mode position, just a little bit more comfortable, and you're not moving around nearly as much in these virtual races as you would in a road race out in real life.
Talked about the importance of those saddles, just like a good pair of shoes. You hear riders develop sort of allegiances to certain saddles. That's the seat that they're sitting on, the padded. And sometimes you'll even see riders buy backup saddles. You don't know how much longer they're going to make your favorite saddle. So sometimes riders will buy 6 or 7 at a time just in case they stop manufacturing them and they say, well, this fits me perfect. And so you kind of bank some saddles. That's when you know you've really found the one that you love.
Yeah, I've heard of a couple of riders doing that, and just the sad day that those saddles are discontinued or suddenly they're starting to make them a little bit differently than they did before. All of a sudden it's a race to buy up all the sort of vintage models, if you will.
It would be like if New Balance all of a sudden stopped making the legendary 608 model. All the dads out there would have to find a new shoe.
Yep, my grandparents every year go and buy out the New Balance factory. Yep. I would hate to see the day.
Back to the front, Godby and Ayala, 1 and 2. Godby building up just over a kilometer lead at this point over Ayala, but again, Erin Ayala sort of riding her own race out there. Jackie Godby doing the same. It takes a special kind of rider to come out here with a 1 kilometer lead, hit a 9% gradient, and then go into your power capacity zone. But Godby looking to get the best workout that she can, obviously getting ready for the ESports World Championships coming up, where she'll be representing the United States. Ellen, talk about the importance of racing in training. They say there's no training like racing. And why is that? Why is racing so important to a goal that will be later in the season for Jackie Godby, maybe end of January, beginning of February? But why is it important that she races now?
Yeah, it's going to be for a lot of things. One, just going through that full preparation is so vital. So she knows exactly what time she has to get on the trainer to start warming up, what she's going to eat the days leading up to the race, what she's going to eat in the moments leading up to the race and during the race, how she's going to pace it, even her strategy of when she's going to go and how long she's able to go for. All of those things really, really hard to simulate without racing. Of course, with virtual racing, it's a little bit more accessible, so she would be able to simulate that race effort on her own, but it's just a little bit harder to kind of tap into the depths of sort of the racing mind without having an actual race, without having Erin Ayala right there in case she decided to let off the pedals. So all of those reasons, really, really important to get the racing in. And that's why I don't think she's going to take it easy today. This is a very valuable race start for her. So she's going to need to really mimic exactly the type of effort that she's going to be hoping for in the Virtual Racing World Championships.
And Ayala doing the same thing, trying to get that training in. So many of these riders use this as, I don't want to call it an off-season anymore. It used to be off-season training where you would use these virtual races as a way to stay fit for another discipline, whether you're getting ready for road racing in the spring or even a cyclocross season, using it to stay in shape during the week in between. But now we're starting to see riders sort of circle these as primary targets on their calendar. So it's nice to see more and more riders focusing on the virtual racing, including Jackie Godby, who has gone full tilt in her virtual racing career. She is still doing some in real life triathlons, which is a whole nother discipline. I mean, that's a whole different can of worms, adding in the running and swimming on top of things. Is there anything that Jackie Godby can't do? Not that we've found yet.
I was just about to say, if there is something that she can't do, I am not privy to it. It just seems like she is one of those, not just super athletes, but truly just superhuman.
Back to third place, the German Kim Miller, who is now dead center between Ayala and Valkenhorst behind her. Let's look at Miller. Got the AirPods going.
Probably got some show tunes blasting.
I'm always curious what riders are listening to. I would imagine most riders probably put some music in the ear. Did you train with music on the trainer, or do you kind of lock into the workout?
I would usually train with music. I went through some really weird periods where I wasn't listening to music, and I would kind of go really deep on my own, or even do it watching TV shows if I was doing sort of like a more extended effort, because I felt like it kept me really interested. But yeah, 90% of the time I was listening to some music. Even if the music was a little bit questionably motivating, I usually had some sort of beats in my ear.
We've seen some riders doing Sudoku puzzles while on the trainer. We've seen riders watching movies. We even saw one kid attending a lecture. He was zooming into a college class while he was also racing.
I respect that. I think the craziest thing I ever did was found a way to attach my Kindle to my stem, and then I made the font really big, so I was able to keep reading while I was pedaling.
Nice. Miller growing the gap back to fourth place and holding steady behind Aaron Ayala. So this is really going to be the battle today. Ayala and Miller pretty well locked in. They almost have the same camera angle and same form. They look like mirror images of each other in real life, don't they?
They really do. It's interesting to watch. Really, the only difference is a little bit of their leg speed. Erin with a little bit more, just a slight bit more of a rock in her pedal stroke. Hard to say at this distance whether that's translating to a little bit more power or not, but they really do just look so similar from this angle.
Averaging right around 3.5 watts per kilo compared to Jackie's 4.7, 4.5, 4.8, somewhere around there. There's a reason she wears that Stars and Stripes jersey as part of her collection, along with the U.S. national team jersey. Over to the right, she has the jersey from Take That Hill, one of the Project Echelon fundraisers building homes for veterans. Then a Noon ambassador as well, her hydration partner. Going to need a lot of that this weekend. Surprised to see only one bottle on the table for a day like this when you're going to be going over an hour, though Jackie does have John Cooper with her there, so maybe she gets fresh bottles from the team car. I'm always amazed how locked in Gabi is to the screen. Just stays on it. We talked about the hydration, the importance of staying hydrated, but some of it is there's a little bit of science that goes into fueling as well. We talked about the drink mix that a lot of riders will have in those bottles. These days, plain old H2O doesn't really do it. They'll have a special powder mix that they put in those bottles. Talk about what's in a mix, Alan, and why you need it on a day like today.
Yeah, that's such a great question. So most of these riders, I would venture to say almost all of them are going to have a carbohydrate mix in their bottles. So it's going to have a bit of salt to help replenish all of the salt that they're losing through sweat, which we see a lot of out there. We talked even a little bit during the pro men's race, just how much some of these riders were sweating that they needed multiple towels to make it through that race. So these riders are going to be losing a lot of sweat. That particular amount of sweat that they're losing really dependent on their sweat rate, how much they sweat and how salty their sweat is. But most riders stay within a pretty standard, we would say like prototypical distance of that sweat rate. And then also they're going to have carbohydrate in that mix. So it's going to be a bit of salt and a bit of carbs to help keep them going and kind of able to calculate based on how hard you're riding, how much you need to be consuming in those bottles. So even Moon, which is a brand we were talking about with Jackie Godby, they previously had calorie-free drink mix, but have now even started making an endurance line to have some sort of carbohydrates for these longer rides and races, because you really just can't do it without restoring that carbohydrate tank. It's something that you can go through really, really quickly. That liver glycogen can be depleted very, very quickly if you're not constantly refueling.
And talk about how that would be different from a sports drink that you would get at the gas station, convenience store, whatever. I mean, why don't they just stop off at the closest 7-Eleven and grab some sports drink? What's the difference?
Honestly, the biggest difference is going to come down to a couple of things. So one, most of these higher quality drink mixes aren't going to have anything like red dye number 7, so they're not going to have artificial coloring like you'll see with Gatorade. The joke with Scratch Labs is you don't sweat red dye number 7, so why do you need to drink it? Why do you need to replace it? Another thing is going to be the source that they use for the carbohydrate. So they will use, getting a little bit out of my expertise here, but I think they're going to use maltodextrin in something like Gatorade or Powerade, whereas they'll use sometimes like fructose, I believe, in something like Scratch Labs or Noon. So it really depends on the source of that carbohydrate. And then the last thing is they're usually just a lot more sugar than you really need. And so a lot of riders will experience a big spike in their blood sugar when they drink those drinks. So just really small details. Those Gatorade drinks especially were developed for athletes and have since been adopted as just kind of something that people will drink throughout the day. But there was science behind those products that's just been a little bit more modified now for specific endurance sport.
I hear a lot of riders talk about how different mixes sit in their stomach too. Some things just don't interact well with the digestive system, and so they'll have certain preferences for certain brands or powdered drink mix that can also customize the ratio too to make it a little more palatable out there. I guess the taste is part of it too. I know a lot you have real trouble trying to drink enough out there. It's not on the top of your mind when you're struggling, your heart rate's up there, you're breathing really heavy. Last thing you want to do is take a big old pull off of that water bottle. So I have to imagine taste plays into that somewhat.
Yeah, it really does. And that's where we'll see, with a product like Science in Sport, they make a very, very liquid gel that makes it a little bit easier to get down a ton of calories at once. Talking once again about Scratch Labs, they make something called Super Fuel, which packs 400 calories into one water bottle, which is basically unheard of. And those type of products that really can help you just mainline carbohydrate and calories, super, super important, because when you are out there, you don't have time or the energy or even really the stomach capacity to put down a couple of water bottles at once in an attempt to get that concentrated amount of calories. So really great to see that sort of big step forward, whereas previously a lot of riders relying on just straight viscous gels. And now having those gels become a little bit more palatable or, in full liquid form.
Especially for the early,
difference.
Some of the early starters, we saw some of our pro men getting out of their pajamas and into their kit. The last thing you want after breakfast is a nice gel at 9:30 in the morning. So, but sometimes you just have to force it down, especially in these longer stages. I know it's all about trying to fuel up. Your body can't hold enough resources to get you through an entire day like today. So you almost have to top up when you get into these longer efforts. Your fuel tank just isn't big enough as a human. And so whether you like it or not, a lot of times you're going to have to be eating and drinking on the bike.
Absolutely, yeah. And going back to, the last thing you want is just a thick gel on top of that breakfast. Something that, we were just talking about with science and sport, having those more watery gels actually makes it so that your body can process it a little bit more easily. This is stuff that I used to know forwards and backwards. And now once I finally have an opportunity to talk about it, of course, I feel that I'm struggling to articulate it articulately. But yeah, extra water content in those science and sport gels just make them go down that much more easily and really make it so that they don't just sit heavily in your gut.
All right, so 4, 5, and 6 all together here. Rankkonen, Valkenhorst, McGregor. This one turning into a good one. Ayala and Miller all alone up ahead of them. So this is the tightest battle on the road right now. With a Swede, a German, and a Kiwi.
Really, really great international representation in this race, which is super cool to see. Just goes to show, one of the many benefits of virtual racing is to have such a great international field that probably isn't really possible on just any old weekend to have this many countries represented.
Watching the American Aaron Ayala out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. In second place. Looks like this gap coming back a little bit up to Miller. This one had gone out. I think some of this is going to be because of the difference in course elevation out there. So you see Miller and Ayala from yesterday. Ayala has a pretty good gap back to Miller in third place. She did a 44.52 compared to Miller's 45.46. So right around, 50, a little over 50 seconds, the gap from Ayala to Miller in the GC. So looks like Aaron Ayala trying to widen her lead in second place today over the German Kim Miller, looking a little further back. Miller and Klein close together in the GC, only 5 seconds separating third and fourth place overall. So while Miller may not be moving into second, she is holding on to third over Julia Klein.
Yeah, and as we've talked before, big motivation out there today for Aaron Ayala, just trying to solidify her lead in the non-Jackie Godby category. So when you're racing with a rider with such a high international caliber as Jackie Godby, it can be easy to get discouraged, but putting into perspective that you were able to either mitigate the time loss today or really just racing all of the other racers, this is definitely a great performance from Ayala.
Well, if these three finish together, looking to see if that'll shift the GC at all, because it does look likely that these three can stay together for the last 25K of racing. I went to public school, though, so you're going to have to hang with me as I do a little bit of math here. I went to public school in Ohio, so you may have to wait a little longer.
I'm going to ignore that bait, Brad, but I will say that I have found myself struggling immensely with calculating these gaps today. Thought I was good at mental math, but I think I've clearly been out of school too long because I really was using all of my brain power to figure out just what our separations were between our top 5 today.
Checking in with our men's B race. Looks like Bozeman getting a little separation down here at the bottom. This guy's been back and forth off the front all day, yo-yoing, as they say. I think he's trying to bait maybe some of these other riders to go with him, or maybe just sort of learning. We talked about how easy it is to overcompensate for power on RGT, so he may be learning how to just round out that power profile a little bit.
Yeah, we saw that a bit in our elite men's race with Bouchard Hall being able to do almost half a watt per kilo less than our winner. So looks like he was able to really just play his cards a little bit more intelligently and save a good bit more energy, although he came up a few seconds short from Versailles. You know, I think that it really goes to show he saved a lot and he still maintained his lead. So a lot of strategy out there in this race, and, you know, a good bit of gameplay that some of these riders may be more familiar than others.
Now things calming down in that group. This is like your worst nightmare on an in real life group ride where you have an unsteady participant. You want to keep that as consistent as possible. And if you don't, you're going to hear about it in a group ride. So something tells me Bozeman wouldn't be making any friends if they were out there in real life today, but he's just testing the limits here on RGT.
Yeah, Bozeman would be one of the riders that if he were a teammate of certainly anyone that I train with, that's when you get a hand in your jersey pocket and you just kind of get reeled back into the group. A gentle way to say, hey, you don't need to go as hard as you're going.
Balsanen in the SIS Zoom room right now. You see the big acceleration here? Yeah, this is why. Into the red zone. Big power coming from Balsanen right now. And he was just trying to cover this move. So far from consistent out here with the men's B group. And Ellen, sometimes this makes that racing about as hard as it's going to get. If you're going to do 30 miles of racing, 30 consistent miles versus 30 erratic miles, very, very different rides.
And it can often make for really like super fun racing to watch. Whereas so much of elite racing can be like very, very strategic. Having these racers that are maybe just that little bit less experienced to leave it all out there just a little bit more. I know, especially in the cyclocross season this year, we were treated to some of the most exciting battles and races in our even in our men's 4 and novice fields. We saw so many thrilling battles because these riders are not as inundated with the knowledge of strategy. So always, you know, good racing is good racing. It is not limited to a particular category.
And so many great battles that these riders will find themselves locked in. Even if it's the race for 27th and 28th place, you sort of find yourself racing against the same people week in and week out. Find other people in your sort of skill stratosphere and exist with them for a lot of the series. So it's been cool watching all those different battles unforming, whether it's for the top or somewhere a little farther down in the results. It's one of my favorite parts about the Echelon Racing League. Very few of these riders are full-time professional bike racers. Most of these people have lives outside of bike racing, and it makes it that much more impressive to be able to find time to take away from real life and train and race in the ERL here.
Yeah, this virtual league, I think, has made racing so much more accessible for our full-time professionals that just have so much of a passion for racing bikes, even if it's not their profession. So really cool that, you know, virtual racing has made it possible that if you only have an hour or an hour and a half to dedicate to a ride or a workout, you're able to hop into a virtual race. And, you know, these particular races with the Echelon Racing League all taking place on the weekend or in the evenings. So making it very, very full-time professional in the working world, you know, very accessible.
There's Matt Bozeman on screen at the front of your men's B race. I think I recognize that meters to go sign from one of the past stage races here in the U.S. Got a little souvenir when visited the race.
That's one of the better souvenirs that you can take from a race. Leaving the Cyclocross World Championships this year in Fayetteville. As the course was coming down, it's sort of anything goes for who wants to take any of those signs. They're not going to reuse them. Some riders are able to get really cool signs, and I saw the people leaving with parking signs and this way to the bathroom. So some of those signs a little bit maybe more decorative or well themed than others. 200 meters to go. Definitely one of those signs that fits very well in the pain cave.
Well, unfortunately for him, he's closer to 20K to go before he gets to his sprint at the finish. Our men's B race. See how he lets off the gas, waiting for these guys to catch up. So when we do see those efforts by him off the front, he's not trying to get away. I think he's just a little too powerful for his own good. He's got to learn how to harness that power. It's like training up the X-Men. You know, you got to learn to use your abilities responsibly. All right, we'll jump back over to our elite women. Godby and Ayala still out there solo. And looks like Kim Miller up in the top left corner. Just under 20K to go for her as Godby goes under 18K remaining.
Jackie Godby is now making quick progress towards having a 2-kilometer separation between her and the rest of the field. Erin Ayala holding a great battle to keep it underneath 2K, but she's currently like 1.8 kilometers in between her and the first place rider. So Jackie Godby really not content with any specific distance. She wants to put as big of a gap as she can between her and the rest of this field.
Godby in a rare segment letting off the power here as she drops it down to a paltry 2.8 watts per kilo on the way down off of the climb right now. Meanwhile, Ayala's still working her way up. You see that steady 5% gradient. The march continues for Erin Ayala. She is about to get up and over, and then she'll enjoy the same descent that Jackie Godby's on right now. So Godby coming up to the last 16.5 kilometers. Remember, that last climb starts right around 8 kilometers to the finish on a really, really cool course here. Now, normally this would be raced earlier in the week in the In Real Life Tour of the Gila. We picked sort of our 3 favorite stages with the time trial, the Mogollon, and then the Gila Monster tomorrow. If you want to try these courses in real life, this is a bucket list event to make it to. Silver City is absolutely worth the drive. It's one of the unique places in America that you're going to visit racing your bike. And they really do a good job to take care of the riders. So that registration is open now on the Tour of the Gila website. 10% off registration through the end of the year. Just scan that QR code. That'll take you directly to the registration page on tourofthegila.com, and you can sign up through Bike Reg from there. But you do want to take advantage of that 10% off before the end of the month. We'd love to see you out in Silver City. One of my favorite races of the year for the purely unique vibes. I'm a big fan of good vibes, and Tour of the Gila's got some of the best. Pristine vibes, as the kids say.
Brad, I think what the kids say is that the vibes are immaculate.
Yes, right. See, I'm not. I messed that one up too. I had my own okay boomer moment. Perfect. Be wearing a pair of New Balances by the end of this race.
Jackie Godby, we have back in her pain cave in the Science and Sport Zoom room. Looks like she could start a tornado at any moment with the amount of wind circulating in that room. It looks like it's coming from all directions. It has her hair blowing up into the air. The jerseys are flying everywhere. I can only imagine what the wind speed is like in that room.
A vortex down in St. Louis.
It looks like a scene in something like Stranger Things before a character that I'm not familiar with would arrive, where all of a sudden a very spooky breeze starts. And the only spooky thing revealing itself here is just how hard Jackie Godby is going on this course.
It is spooky. She almost looks possessed when she gets into the zone. Godby pre-race, very lighthearted. She was dancing around, had the fist pumps going, pumping some tunes. Afterwards, she's right onto the chocolate, chatting with us in the SIS Zoom room. But, man, in between that start line and finish line, it is all business for Jackie Godby.
You know, I just have to say, as a former racer, how much I admire Jackie Godby's focus and precision out there. She has such a massive gap that it can be kind of hard to stay focused when you already have a lead like she has, still with 15 kilometers to go. It's really, really admirable that she is still so laser focused out there and does not seem to be slowing down whatsoever, even though there isn't really a big sense of urgency for her right now.
Same thing for Ayala. So tough to do this when you're all alone. No carrot in front of you, no one chasing behind you. But you just kind of lock into that power zone where you're comfortable, and it becomes a lot like yesterday's time trial, just a little longer. About twice as long as they raced yesterday, just over 16 miles yesterday, 30.18 on tap today, and Godby at just over 14 kilometers to go. Put her at right around 8.5 miles, maybe a little more. So getting down to it, but those last 3 or 4 miles will tick by real slowly as they're pretty much all uphill, as we saw on that course profile.
Impressive work here from second place rider Erin Ayala. Looks like she has been able to maintain a really steady distance behind Jackie Godby. So as Jackie starts to settle in a little bit more to her tempo zone, Erin seems to be able to do the same, has not gone outside of 2K behind Jackie. So she's still holding steady at right around 1.7, 1.8K behind our leader.
The other thing we're watching on the stats page for Godby is heart rate and cadence. We talk a lot about power, talked a lot about the wattage, but the other thing that I noticed is really consistent and steady with her is her cadence, right around 79, 80 RPMs. That's another thing that people have a really hard time doing, is keeping a steady cadence. If you've ever tried to do this out on an open road, on a road bike, it's really tough to do. It seems like it should be easy on paper. I'm just going to keep riding the same effort, but actually difficult to keep that RPM the same. That also speaks to keeping the power the same as well, but just consistency all around for Jackie Godby.
Yeah, Jackie is one of the riders who, on a race like today, you were saying this is really just an extended time trial. This just plays so perfectly into her hands. Her power is smooth, her heart rate is really consistent, and then those RPMs just really steady. They're not super fast. She looks like she spins slightly on the slower side, but it works, and she just really knows exactly what she needs to do to produce a phenomenal effort out here today.
Back to Erin Ayala, grinding it out here on the 8% gradient. She is now on one of those pre-climbs, we'll call it. I don't think she'll have come off of the main road right now, but this is just one of those short kickers. A lot of rolling ups and downs on the approach, too. You know those roads where you can look up ahead and you see the next like 7 or 8 rollers that you have to do, kind of waiting for you? There is a section of that course that they're on right now. So do these short, quick uphills and then the fast downhills, but never seems to be enough momentum off of that downhill to get you up and over the next one, does there?
No, definitely not. And I think that that's one perhaps difference between in real life racing and virtual racing is I think that you can let up just a little bit more on the in real life downhills than you can really afford to on the virtual downhills. That may be incorrect, but that's definitely my assessment.
Ayala dumping the profile from yesterday. Remember, we saw her with the printed profile on her custom racing table in front of her yesterday. Day like today, not really going to matter as much with a longer effort. She knows where that climb is coming, so got some, I think those are Scratch Lab gummies down there. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I am very familiar with that particular product, and I know that Erin's team, maybe not on the virtual side, but in real life side, is sponsored by Scratch Labs. So no surprise to see her opting for those to keep her going for the next 14K.
Those chewables seem really popular for riders in the virtual space. A little easier on the stomach, a little easier to get down.
Yeah, and in these longer races too, where you do potentially, or you are going just potentially a little bit easier, you may have the capacity to chew a couple of gels. If you were in a couple of chews rather, if you were in a cyclocross race or in a similar race like that, I'm so sorry, my dog has breached the threshold.
Uh-oh, is that Winnie?
Yes, this is Winnie, if anyone can hear very loud snuffling happening. She has broken in to the dog-free zone.
Can we get Winnie on camera?
Do you want Winnie on camera?
I'm always down for a dog appearance in the Echelon Racing League. I'm always happy to see a dog on camera.
What you look for. Winnie, come here. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Winnie, do you want to come on?
Winnie just wants to annoy you, and that's it. Mission accomplished today.
She's suddenly camera shy, apparently.
All right, we'll continue working on Winnie Cam out there.
Winnie Cam.
Meanwhile, Miller back to third spot with a consistent 370 meters back to Ayala and another 450 to Valkenhorst.
All right, we have Winnie Cam. We have Winnie on camera.
There we go. The Winnie Cam. Hello, Winnie.
Hi, Winnie. Why do you smell like fish?
Uh-oh. Winnie, what have you been getting into?
Yeah, who really is to say? It could be anything.
Wendy looks like she's having a good time. Thanks for sharing her with the world, Ellen.
It's my pleasure.
We'll have to do a pet day in the Echelon Racing League. Everyone can bring your pet to work. Bring your pet to the races.
Yes, we saw earlier today, we saw Paul Kilgore with his healer dog with their corn chip ears, as they're affectionately referred to, making an appearance on camera. So I'd love to get to see a tour of everyone's special pets that is part of this Echelon Racing League. I feel so fortunate to get to see everyone's pain caves, but now we'd like to see the animals that may be banished from the pain cave just for their own safety.
Riders, if you're listening on the live stream today, get your swan ears to get those dogs into the Zoom room looks, and we'll bounce around and get some more pets on camera. Doesn't have to be a dog, whether you get a cat or a bird or reptiles. Saw someone with a pet raccoon last year, so whatever you got, bring them out. We want to see them. Apparently they make pretty good pets, believe it or not. Easily domesticated, I learned.
I think we need to be careful asking any of our Australian riders or riders from New Zealand to show us their pets, because I think that there is an entirely different world of animals going on down there, and all that I've heard is everything in Australia wants to kill you. Same goes for the desert, as I've been told. So really curious to see what sort of pets they have down in Australia and New Zealand.
Bonus points if anyone has a Gila monster pet. That is one animal I think you don't want to run into out in the wild.
Although I'm sure a couple people are hoping to tame the Gila monster during tomorrow's final stage of our virtual tour of the Gila.
Gila monster, the only venomous lizard native to the United States, found in southwest United States, including just outside of Silver City. Not generally dangerous. They're pretty sluggish. They're not super quick, but if they do cross paths with you, they can get scary sometimes. So if you see one while you're out riding the Tour of the Gila in real life, probably just keep riding. They probably don't care about you. A little further back, looking at Anna Rokkanen here in 6th position. Looking at the teams inside the top 10 here, the Velocity Vixen squad of Aaron Ayala occupying 1, 5, and 7. Beast Mode Rose team out of Germany sitting in 3rd and 4th, now 5th. And then Triple X Racing with Rokkanen here in 6th, and our race leader, Jackie Godby, up at the front. Anna Shveshkev, known as Sheshi, in 7th and 8th place out there right now. There's Anna. Staying hydrated out there. Rocking the trucker hat. Keep a little of that sweat off your brim. Check out some more Zoom rooms here as we got a little time before they hit the bottom of this climb. We saw this one earlier for Soli. Looks like she's got a spare bike in there as well. Never know when you're going to need an extra bike here in the ERL.
I sort of assumed that that bike to her side was because misery loves company, which Sarah McMaster is also showing. You can see someone riding just to her, I don't know, right or left.
Be her, yeah, her left. Certainly helps to have someone there riding with you, although I don't know how much conversation you can engage in when you start to get into the yellow, orange, and red zones on the Ceres power meters there, but this helps to know somebody else is struggling with you out there. So McMaster sitting in 9th place on course right now. So still riding inside the top 10 here. And it looks like Lowe in 10th with a dropout here for Maggie Lowe. So this is definitely a technical here. What happens here, registering 0 power, this means that the rider has lost connection. Now, it'll keep you in the game for a certain period, but if you don't get reconnected, that does kind of end your race. So this is as close as you're going to get to a flat tire in the virtual world. The Wi-Fi or Bluetooth dropout, registering 0 power right now for Lowe. That's a bummer. You know, and we talked about the preparation for virtual racing, some of the difference is between in real life and virtual. So many times we hear about the best riders paying attention to the littlest things, and it's no surprise that oftentimes the best riders suffer the least mechanicals. It's because they're the riders that are checking their tires over. They're making sure that every bolt is tightened down on the bike. They know their machines really well, and it's all just this little bit of preparation. Same goes for virtual racing, but it's a different type of preparation. You see riders that made the effort to make sure they have a wired internet connection, making sure that no other devices are connected, no one's watching Netflix on the network, all these things that you have to do before the race that are a whole different set for in real life racing. We're learning what the best virtual riders do, and it's no surprise that Jackie Godby has been able to avoid. It's not that she has better internet than everyone else. It's not that she is some tech whiz that can keep her computer connected better. But what's not a coincidence is that Jackie Godby and John Cooper are always the first people to log in to both the game and RGT well before the first race of the day, sometimes 2 hours before the first race starts. They're logged into RGT. They're logged into Zoom. They're checking their connection. They're making sure everything's tight. It's the mindset of a champion, making sure that everything is perfect.
It is. It really, really calls back to the adage of luck favors the prepared, and it certainly seems to be that way out here today and in so many of these virtual races that we see Jackie Godby and her partner, like you said, being prepared, getting online early. If there is a problem, they're going to be aware of it and have the runway to be able to resolve it. Just all these little things that come with preparation and also experience. It's something that we've talked about a lot with in real life racing is at a certain point, you're kind of aware of everything that could go wrong, that has conceivably gone wrong in the past, and you're able to just take certain precautions that maybe you wouldn't know to prepare for if you've never had it go wrong for yourself or someone in your circle. So probably some of these riders are doing things that we don't even know about, but one thing that you said, having that hardwired internet connection is going to be a massive advantage and something that we as remote virtual commentators can definitely sympathize about.
Up to the front of our men's B race now. Looks like Lopez getting a little bit of company from Comé Spa. He has just joined on. I see Lopez in the red zone of power. Comé not doing much to stay with it. Really efficient riding here from the Frenchman. Joining up with Lopez here. So look at Lopez feeling the effort today.
I didn't get a chance to mention this last time we had Lopez on camera, but regardless of the result today, he certainly wins our style competition with this incredible jersey. Roosters or chickens? I am not qualified to say, but regardless, that jersey is absolutely my favorite outfit that we've seen so far. I think it might rival even the reindeer hat that we saw in our earlier hand cycle race.
Where do you even get a jersey like that? How cool.
I don't know, but I need to know.
An arrow to boot. That is that's not your average club cut jersey.
You know, arrow is everything, even in the virtual world.
Oh, Lopez keeping the pressure on. This guy has been driving this men's B race up at the front. Here's a little pass. Gomez Spawn, cold-blooded. Came up to Lopez, sat on him for 5 minutes, and then makes the pass.
I don't know if that pass was intentional, as it looks like he's now slowing back down. It's so hard to say without being able to see the rider at this moment, whether they meant to make the pass or if they maybe just took a couple hard pedal strokes to maybe get out of the saddle, reposition, kind of change positions. And if they accidentally achieved a separation, sometimes that is part of the gameplay here on RGT.
Well, part of this is because of the uphill. Look at the cadence. It has now dropped to 50 rotations per minute for Lopez. He is barely getting up this hill right now. You can see how slow that pedal stroke becomes, and it just looks painful. This is pedaling squares out there right now. Nothing fluid about it, going up a 5 to 7% gradient here. After racing off the front, the time trial yesterday, this is brutal. 10% now.
Oh, it just looks so challenging. And like we've talked about, that resistance is coming from the rear wheel made by the trainer. So you really have to work to stay on top of that gear. You have to just put that power down. And honestly, sometimes the harder you go, the easier it gets just to get ahead of that resistance to be able to keep the cadence moving. So sometimes slowing down can really, really be to your disadvantage in a scenario like this.
Lopez was third place in the individual time trial yesterday. He's going to need a little over 50 seconds over Matthew Bozeman to move into the GC lead after today. It's going to be pretty close. Bozeman is 360 meters back in third place to Lopez right now, so this will be right on the edge of Lopez trying to move into the GC lead in our men's B classification. Keep an eye on these two up at the front, and Matt Bozeman in third trying to defend his overall lead after the individual time trial yesterday. Back out to Godby and Ayala. Both have the exact same heart rate here at 171. I think that's interesting.
That is, and it's actually interesting to see that they're doing really similar power as well. Erin Ayala clearly on a very tough section of the course. Looks like she's now getting close to 20%, and you can see her cadence drop down to 60 revolutions per minute. So she is really, really working for this one, but it's going to get easier, and she knows that because she can see that Jackie Godby is able to turn those pedals over a little bit faster. So all she has to do is get through this, and then she has a little reprieve coming up.
See how Ayala's bike moves a little bit underneath her as she's shifting back and forth. She has one of those Ceres boards that we were talking about underneath her. It makes it just a little more realistic, a little more comfortable, and just a little less weird. Something just doesn't feel quite right when you're on a bike that doesn't have any other movement to it. Almost feels more like a spin class than riding on your bike.
Yeah, and it makes that transition back out onto the road a little bit more natural. You don't go from having this perfectly stagnant device to riding something that can move in any direction. It really makes you feel like you're continuing to ride a bike and not a spin bike, as throughout the entire year.
There's a reason that we see so many free weights and other workout equipment in these pain caves of these riders. You see some of those hand weights there behind Ayala. Talk about training as an athlete. Even if you're training for the bike, your training is more than just racing and riding your bike. Talk about some of the other sort of workouts or training that you would do as a cyclist that may not be on the bike.
Yeah, that's sort of the interesting thing of riding and racing bikes, is that it's not always what you do on the bike that makes you faster. There are some things that can help you so much that you're not necessarily going to train on the bike. So doing a lot of what we called cross training, that's going to be working out in the gym, doing yoga, sometimes running and swimming, depending on who you are. Of course, for Jackie Godby, that's going to be a given, but even for non-triathlete racers, that's going to be something that you look for. And actually right now, if you look, Erin Ayala is standing up, she's stopped pedaling, and it looks like she's fiddling with something, maybe a window. Really hard to say, but she clearly lost a little bit of time. So whatever she is doing has to be very, very important, or else she wouldn't take that. Oh, it looks like she may be having an issue with her trainer or her setup.
Quick adjustment back on. It looks like she's reaching for a cord too. She pulled a cord up from the left side. Oh, could it be a shifting battery? Could it be like an ETAT battery is running out maybe, and she's swapping batteries here?
Oh, that is definitely what that looks like. That's a really, really good eye, Brad.
I was trying to guess what she would be doing on the back of her bike that also involved a cord, and the only thing I can think is that she's having trouble shifting right now. She just used her last shifts. So she has now unplugged the battery, and I think plugged it in right here. So she is now locked into one gear. She no longer has rear shifting on that bike until that battery right there gets charged up again. So I hope she's got the quick charger, or she had a spare battery. She may have swapped the two batteries. You can't hot swap them. So if she had a spare ready to go, this is another one of those things you have to add to the list of things that you have to prepare for in virtual racing. Now we got to add making sure that your drivetrain is charged up to the list.
Yeah, that's such a great example of something that a mistake that you only make once. So I can almost guarantee that Erin Ayala will never have this issue again. So she could be one of the people, if she's anything like me, that she will always double check, triple check that her battery is charged before a race, because that is something that when it happens, you never want to repeat that mistake. And maybe potentially, although I'm not sure if I saw this happening, she might have been able to pull the battery from her front derailleur and then put it into the rear derailleur, which I am guilty of doing a couple of times, but not really sure what is going on that would involve her needing to plug that battery in. It did look like she spent a little bit of time fiddling with that wire, trying to get the battery charged. So whatever's going on, it looks like she is planning on needing that battery again very soon.
And those batteries go a long time in between charges, so it's not weird to run out of battery. It's not like you're charging it every day. You could very easily go a whole week on the same battery charge and be just fine. It's kind of like your bike computer or the lights on your bike. You never really know how much charge is in those things. You're just kind of guessing, like, it's been a while since I charged it. I should probably plug it in. So Ayala getting caught on the wrong side of that. Sometimes you get a bad reading, too. It'll tell you that it's full when it's not. So I wonder if maybe had an issue with the charging, but either way, quick change. That also speaks to the, I guess, professionalism of Erin Ayala to be able to focus on that problem and get it solved in the middle. There are a lot of riders that just couldn't handle that. It's like, that's too much. I'm in the middle of this race. There's something wrong with my bike. It's over. Day's over. But Ayala was very calm, figured out the issue, got it fixed, and it looks like she's back to it now.
She is, but this does bring that race back between her and Miller into a slightly more heated battle. So only 500 meters separating them now with just over 4 kilometers to go. So we have seen bigger gaps come down in less time than this in our elite men's race. So as they are reaching the toughest part, the final kick of this finishing climb, I think that we're going to see a big battle between Ayala and Miller.
Ayala checking the battery. Yeah, so that is her rear battery. She has been riding on a single gear this entire time. So she is putting that battery back in right now. And I think she would have just put it back on her front derailleur, because if she can reach it from on the bike, then that's got to be the front. So I think you're right. She probably took the front out, put it in the rear, and then charged up the front derailleur just for 10 or 15 minutes, but enough to get her through the last 4.5 kilometers of racing here. So close. It's like running out of battery on your phone just before you get home. And right back to it. Erin Ayala is my hero. A great bike racer. I would be in the fetal position on the floor right now if I did anything that Erin has tried to do today, whether it's the riding or the mid-race battery change. Godby onto the final climb here, hitting that 12% gradient on the way up. Seeing a very rare non-steady power profile from Jackie Godby on this climb, but it is near impossible to keep that line as steady as she can on the flats on the way up. As that trainer starts adding more and more resistance, it just becomes almost impossible to keep that that power in a straight line. So she is feeling this effort on the last 1.5 kilometers of the climb up to Mogollon today. It's probably another skill that Godby had to learn. You don't see a lot of out-of-the-saddle riding in triathlon racing. They're not doing a ton of big climbing or anything like that, so that'll be a new skill acquired by Godby for virtual racing. A little more powerful, Ellen, standing up on the bike. Obviously, in the real world, it does come with aerodynamic disadvantages to stand up, but here, maybe not the best endurance position, but I think for short power bursts, you can get a little more wattage out of standing up.
Yeah, and it almost looks like, if you look at her power profile, it almost looks deliberate, where she has these peaks and valleys of standing up, pedaling really hard, and then sitting down a little bit. I have to wonder if she's almost trying for a bit of a workout, or if maybe this is just a coincidence, but these really do look like very deliberate little mesas out here on her power profile.
Would that be a typical workout? I mean, would you do these sort of set intervals? Does that sort of align with what a training plan would look like coming from a coach?
You know, it's really, really hard to say. There is so much variance between coach to coach as to what they will prescribe. But I think for a rider like Jackie Godby, who is so steady, it's not inconceivable that she would be doing an effort like this to maybe try to train her variable power a little bit more, especially preparing for the virtual world championships. She may be sort of trying to train those weaknesses, and doing a little bit more variable power is going to help her stay in the mix in those bigger races coming up.
That's a good point, because when she goes to the World Championships, she ain't going to be riding like this. It is not a solo steady ride off the front. When she goes up against the best in the world, she's going to need to respond to those moves. So good prep for Jackie Godby getting ready for the World Championships coming up here. I believe it's still coached by Chris Navin at the Triple X Racing team. So getting her ready to go for hopefully a top 5 ride in the World Championships. 6th place last year, but I think she learned some things. The World Championships take place on a different platform called Zwift, which is a little different from RGT. We talked about some of the differences in gameplay. Well, same goes on Zwift. You do have to play the game the right way on Zwift. So Godby has a lot of power, but using it on different platforms is a little different. Inside the last kilometer for Jackie Godby, down to her last 1,000 meters of racing on the way up here on stage 1 of the virtual tour of the Gila. And all things considered, Jackie Godby looking pretty good heading into national and world championship season in just a few weeks here after the new year. But right now, all things shaping up perfectly for Godby, as I think her trip to the World Championships will be the biggest target on her calendar, and we'll certainly be rooting her on with a legit chance of bringing back a World Championship medal for Jackie Godby.
Yeah, that would be phenomenal. And, you know, like we were just talking about with her preparation, she just strikes me as such an intelligent rider and someone who's very, very process focused. So I'm sure she took everything that she learned last year, looked at where she performed well and where she had weaknesses, and she will be making a very concerted effort to target those weaknesses. So I'm really excited to see what sort of performance she's going to be capable of at the World Championships later on this year.
Just another one of those things that makes Jackie Godby one of the greats. All the way to the line here with a comfortable 2.5 kilometer lead, but staying on the gas. She said it's all about the process. It's all about getting better. Every single time Jackie Godby throws her leg over that bike, she's looking for ways to improve, looking for ways to get better, and that's how you end up winning stages of the Echelon Racing League by 2.5 kilometers, by being relentless in the pursuit of perfection. I think that describes Jackie Godby to a T. Cadence right around 85 rotations per minute with 350 meters to go. I think we'll get a patented Jackie Godby fist bump at the finish as well. She doesn't show a whole lot of, I don't want to say emotion, but she's very business-minded, let's say, when she's on the bike. So we usually get a short celebration at the finish, and then it's right back to work. The race also, Ellen, is not just when you're on the bike. We talked about the preparation before, but talk about what goes into it after as well. You got to start recovering immediately after a ride like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's a ton of adages about how, you know, the next race starts as soon as you come across the finish from this one. And so these riders are going to have probably a protein or recovery shake, or at least a protein carbohydrate meal, start to get the legs up, do a big cool down, of course, and then start to focus on fueling and recovering for tomorrow.
Day 2 always comes quickly after day 1, and day 3 comes even quicker. A celebration for Jackie Godby with both hands in the air and a big thumbs up. The struggle is real, but not for Jackie Godby up there on the front. One of the best feelings in the world, wrapping up a hard ride like that. It's all over. We talked about the post-time trial feeling. Probably the worst that you feel during the entire time trial is right after it finishes. I don't know if that's the same holds true for these long days. I think you're happy to be done when you finally hit the finish line on a big climbing day like today.
Yeah, I would say typically absolutely, but on a day like today, this really is just an extended time trial. So I don't know if these riders are going to feel a whole lot better than they did after yesterday's finish. It's really anyone's guess. I think when we get to see another clip of Aaron Ayala or Miller in their pain cave, we may be able to sort of garner a guess, but it looks like both of these riders are riding so steady kind of in that threshold zone, and that's really, they call it sweet spot, but I don't know if I would call it sweet. It's just really, you know, that sort of long pronounced struggle, and it's only going to get harder from here with just under 3K to go.
Miller starting to feel it. Look at the suffering for the Rose Beast Mode rider on the left side of the SIS Zoom room here as they go inside their last 2.5 kilometers. And remember, Ayala coming back from what could have been a race-ending mechanical, but Ayala had her wits about her to get that fixed and dialed. And it looks like she is back to her full range of shifting. Also speaks to her ability just to understand the basics of the bike underneath you. There are some athletes that can't even change their own flat tire out there. But I think if you're going to ride at this level, you have to have some understanding of your machine. And it's nice that she was able to use her knowledge of the bike and shifting system to get that fixed, as opposed to just saying, I'm going to have to take this to the bike shop.
Yeah, awesome for Ayala to be able to do that. And then the big moment is that it brought her back into striking distance from Miller. So 2.5K to the finish for Miller, but only 400 meters in change separates her and Ayala. So just as they're getting to the final pointy end of this race with a lot of steep climbing left to go, we are about to see a battle for second place.
Men's B race separating out in front. The Frenchman, Colma Espan, has now passed Lopez. We saw them battling last time we checked in. Both of them were together. Looks like the Frenchman going to hold on for the win here. As he goes inside 900 meters. Lopez should be able to hold on for second. Then a little farther back, the battle here is really 4 and 5. Bozeman and Villanueva. Down to 7:50 to go for Colma. It's interesting watching the different cadences of different riders on the way up and how they sort of approach it. You're either a big gear person or a small gear person on the climb. Mash for the cash or spin to win, as they say. Really comes down to preference, whether you want to put that stress on your cardiovascular system or try and put that stress on the muscles in your legs. Those are sort of your two options. So Comey going to hold on for our men's B race as we saw another dominant performance from Jackie Godby. Time to check in with Jackie in the SIS Zoom room where Emma Watson going to grab a word with her.
Thanks, Brad. I'm here with today's winner of the women's race, Jackie Godby. Jackie, how are you feeling?
Very sweaty, very tired, and very excited. That was a long, tough ride, and I'm really happy with how it went.
Talking a little bit more about that ride, what part of this course challenged you, and how did it make you feel better about the way that you're riding now going into the rest of the season?
I mean, the Mogollon is always going to be challenging on that last hill. And, you know, at the beginning of this season, I was really struggling with overtraining, with being sick. And, you know, I was really personally frustrated with my ability to do these long endurance efforts. So coming back, you know, doing the time trial yesterday, doing that final finishing hill today with a really prolonged time trial effort, punching up those hills, it hurt. But it hurt in a very validating way, knowing that, you know, I was still mentally strong. I'm still in the game. And ultimately, even when I'm digging into that deep, dark hole, I'm still having fun.
Over the course of a couple of seasons here in Echelon Racing League and outside of it, what areas have you seen improve the most?
For me personally, or talking more generally about this field of virtual cycling?
For you personally.
So for me personally, I've been working a lot on my strength training, actually. You know, that's really important to me because my whole philosophy of sport is enjoy sport to enjoy life, you know, have a healthy lifestyle, really stay functional and active. And, you know, moving cross country, this is going to sound ridiculous, moving cross country twice in the past 2 years, I really appreciated my ability to just pick up heavy things. You know, having that functional strength, being able to go and do hikes, being able to go and do rides, you know, so really taking the fitness we have in sport, taking the fitness that we train in the gym and translating it to do fun things in the real world, staying healthy, staying fit, staying functional. And that's been fantastic.
Looking forward now, you were selected to represent the United States with the national team at the ESports Championships, World Championships in February. How does that feel and how are you preparing for it?
It feels amazing. I am so excited to represent Team USA. Worlds is always just a meeting of really fantastic racers from all around the world. You know, I get to fangirl, really get excited to toe the line shoulder to shoulder with these women that I've admired on the screen for so long. And in terms of training, you know, I'm focusing on my sleep, focusing on my recovery, racing here, you know, really trying to get my fitness to the next level, but stay healthy, stay functional, and stay mentally enjoying it. Because again, ultimately, we go back to that theory of fitness is for life. You know, you have to enjoy it. And when it feeds back, when you're mentally healthy, when you're physically healthy, it just feels good and you get to stay with it.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to see where you go in the future of ERL and forward and beyond. Well, thank you, Brad. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Emma. Jackie Godby with another win. It's been a pleasure getting to know Jackie in the SIS Zoom rooms. You get a new piece of information every time we talk to her. So we talk to her a lot here in the Echelon Racing League. Race for third and fourth place getting interesting. Bronwyn McGregor has now gone past Kim Miller in the last 1.5 kilometers. A change back here as McGregor, the Kiwi, has moved up ahead of Kim Miller with some massive wattage, doing right around 4.5 watts per kilo. So Bronwyn McGregor kept her powder dry, and she is using it all on this last climb. 1.25 kilometers to go, and she is lighting this one up to ride onto the podium in third.
This is a really, really impressive comeback from McGregor. It didn't even look initially at first glance like she was going to be in contention for the podium whatsoever. And now it looks like she might even be able to bring back Ayala. With just 1K to go, Ayala going under that 1K to go banner, it still feels like anyone's race for second.
There's only 160 meters between Ayala and McGregor on the game. You can see about 170 meters up the road on a flat road. So pretty soon, Bronwyn McGregor is going to see the rear wheel of her teammate, Erin Ayala, up the road. As they go inside 1 kilometer, though, these switchbacks may prevent that from happening. That's good news for Ayala. That'll keep McGregor off her back a little bit. And this gap going out even a little more, up to 180 meters now for Erin Ayala, trying to hold on to this second-place position that she has held all day long since making that initial split of 3 riders with Kim Miller, who's now in 4th place, and Jackie Gobby, the eventual winner. The separation came after about 20 minutes of riding in that front group, and Ayala been holding on to 2nd place ever since. But this is Bronwyn McGregor trying to change that and move up into 2nd place ahead of her Velocity Vixen teammate, Erin Ayala, though Ayala been super consistent on the front. I think she's still got this one in the bag at right under 700 meters to go for Ayala now. Gap going back out over 200 meters. So McGregor must have been in almost a full-on sprint out there to bring back Miller and get this close to Ayala, but I think she is starting to run out of gas right now. See the difference in cadence for these two. McGregor on the right, Ayala on the left. It looks like McGregor shifting from that big gear earlier into a little easier gear, higher rotations per minute. And now spend a lot of time out of the saddle. That's bad news for Ayala.
Ayala looking like she's struggling to keep the pace just a little bit, not looking at her pain cave so much as her numbers on the screen. You can see them dropping a little bit. She's kind of fluctuating between the green and the light blue zone, so she's really going to need to dig deep to be able to get just these final few hundred meters ahead of McGregor.
Gap at 120 meters coming down between McGregor and Ayala. McGregor can just see Ayala going out of sight as she makes her way up and around that left-hand bend down to the last 350 meters for Ayala. And remember, this was at 250 meters at 1K to go, so she gave up 150 meters in 300 meters, which means it can be done for McGregor right now on paper at 110 meters to go now.
Regardless of the outcome, this is going to be good news for McGregor. She will be able to move up a bit, I believe, in the overall standings. She's currently sitting 5th, so this could be very good news for her to be able to take a little bit of that deficit out from Kimberly Miller and Julia Klein.
Yeah, this will be a big pickup for Bronwyn McGregor with her 46.03 yesterday to Erin Ayala's 44.52. So McGregor probably going to move past Miller and Klein here. I'm looking at Miller at 425 meters back behind McGregor. That'll be probably over 30 seconds by the time she gets to the line. And McGregor only, let's see, call it 16 seconds behind Miller on the GC. So as long as McGregor beats Miller by 16 or more today, which I do think she is going to, she's going to move into the top 3 overall here as Erin Ayala makes her way to the line after a huge day on the bike, knocking out 30 tough miles here in the virtual tour of the Gila. She holds off Bronwyn McGregor. McGregor going to hold on for 3rd today and move up on the GC. That'll make things interesting heading into the last day of racing tomorrow with another really tough day. More climbing on the Gila Monster stage tomorrow, but that climbing is spread out over a little more. It's not quite as concentrated as we had today in this final climb, so be slightly different. Meanwhile, Julia Valkenhorst moving up here. She has now gone past Miller. So this is Valkenhorst moving up into 4th. Miller dropping down to 5th. Ain't over till it's over. This climb making its mark on the Echelon Racing League this week.
Yeah, today's stage has really done a good job, especially with this final climb, at shaking up our overall standings. Definitely not just business as usual at the front of our GC classification in both our men's and women's category.
There is a word in German that specifically describes the way that Kim Miller is feeling right now, I'm sure. I don't know what it is, but I know they've got pretty much a word for everything, so she's probably struggling to find the word to describe the pain that Kim Miller is in right now. This is hard to watch. Ouch. Valkenhorst in for 4th. This last little bit for Kim Miller right now, these 200 meters, really speaks to the ability to fight through. It's so easy to unplug this game. You could sell your laptop and never have to look at this thing ever again. But Miller's going to be back for more tomorrow. And that's the bike racer in her. So she is down to her last 140 meters of riding, getting ready to wrap up our top 5 in the pro women. Looking ahead to the final day of the Tour of the Gila tomorrow. We'll have the same 10 a.m. Eastern start time for the Gila Monster stage coming up. It's going to be another really interesting one, but again, it'll be a little different from today, so we'll be continuing to watch those battles out there on course. But today, plenty of stories of perseverance out there. I think Aaron Ayala is maybe my favorite story of the day with the mid-race battery swap. Takes a certain kind of rider to do that. Aaron Ayala had it today, but really great performances all across the board. And our elite men's race, our para race, our men B, and our elite women wrapping up as we congratulate Kim Miller on a 5th place finish, but all about Jackie Godby out there today. Another stunning performance from the queen of the Echelon Racing League. And Ellen, I'm so excited to watch Jackie head over to the World Championships this year. If her race is anything like what she's been doing here in the Echelon Racing League, we got a chance of seeing an American with a gold medal around her neck.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to see how her season turns out. And yeah, I think that she's on really, really good form for a phenomenal result at the World Championships.
All right, well, that is going to do it for our coverage today of Stage 2 of the virtual Tour of the Gila, presented by visitsilvercity.org. Don't forget, we're back here at 10 a.m. tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern, for the start of our Elite Men. You can catch that all on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you're streaming the race right now. So for Ellen Noble, my name is Brad Soner, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. for the final stage of the virtual Tour of the Gila.